William Theodore Woodward.
And earlier in this case, you were present when your father, William Woodward, testified, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Mr. Woodward, let me start off by asking you, back in the time period of August 5th through September 3rd of 2012, where were you living?
1960 Smith Drive South, Titusville, Florida.
How long had you lived there at this point in time?
We moved in December 2nd, 1998.
Now, prior to moving to that residence, had you done a tour of duty or duties in the armed services?
Yes, sir. 4 years with the United States Army.
Okay. And what period of time was that?
5 August 1987 to 2 August 1991.
During that tour of duty in the armed services, did you suffer any what has later been determined to be a service-related disability?
Yes, sir, I did.
Could you explain to the court the first aspect of what ultimately led to your disability?
At 10:30 a.m. on July 29, 1988, I fell through a rotten piece of 2x8 that was on top of a wooden veranda, a garden veranda, that had vines growing through it. I fell 12 feet head first to a concrete slab, at which point I landed exactly here on my forehead. This was the point of impact.
Okay. And as a result of that, were you diagnosed with any sort of permanent injury?
Yes, sir, I was.
What was that?
When I split my skull here and underneath the orbit of my right eye, I also suffered a basilar skull fracture at the rear of my skull, which severed the nerve going to my inner ear, or from my inner ear to my brain, in effect killing all nerve function of my right ear, removing the hearing and equilibrium from my right ear.
Okay. How about the hearing from your left ear? Was it affected by that injury?
No, sir. I have perfect hearing in my left ear, with the exception of some age.
Okay. And has since being discharged from the service, has your hearing been regularly tested to see if there's been any deterioration in your hearing?
Yes, sir, it is. It's documented through my Veterans Administration medical records.
And has there been any deterioration in the hearing in your left ear?
No, sir.
Even after that injury, it's my understanding that you were returned to active duty. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir, from Triple Army Hospital.
And did you do a tour of duty in Afghanistan?
No, sir, I did not.
In Iraq?
No, sir.
Where?
My tour of duty was in Saudi Arabia.
I apologize. Saudi Arabia. And what was your actual assignment in Saudi Arabia?
Sir, my actual assignment was a personnel clerk.
Okay. And what were some of your duties as a personnel clerk?
I did not have any duties as a personnel clerk, sir. I was removed from my personnel section and moved to the 1st platoon, which was maintenance, vehicle operations, and construction, under First Sergeant Terry Dow.
Okay. And where did you perform those duties under the supervision of Sergeant Dow?
During the buildup of Desert Shield, it was in the port city of Dammam. We were stationed approximately 15 miles due west of the Persian Gulf, the port, and approximately 300 miles south of Kuwait.
And did that location ever undergo any sort of attack or bombing?
Yes, sir. That's where we regularly receive Scud missile attacks after January the 17th and 18th, after the war started.
And when you returned to the United States, were you experiencing any problems as a result of your service in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, sir, I was.
And ultimately, were you examined and did you apply for disability?
Yes, sir, I applied for a disability.
And as part of that disability was a requirement that you obtain documentation of your service dates and Scud missile attacks and things of that nature.
During my first compensation and pension evaluation, no, they did not ask me for that.
At some point, did they?
No, sir, not in 1992.
Okay. Was there a point in time? The reason I'm asking this, Mr. Beatty seemed to be interested in that in terms of your wife, whether or not there was a time period where you all gathered documentation in support of your disability claim.
That was not until 2007, sir.
Okay. I'm not particularly concerned about the time frame. My question is more, did you do that?
Yes, sir, I did in 2007 on my second compensation and pension claim.
Okay. And did your wife assist you in that?
Yes, sir.
And what was the purpose of doing that research?
It was to show the VA where I was, when I was, and what circumstances I was exposed to.
And once you were able to provide that additional documentation along with the other documentation that you were presenting at that compensation hearing, was a determination made as to whether or not you suffered from a service-related disability?
Yes, sir, it was. I was given a temporary 100% disability at that moment.
Okay. And was there a later determination made that you were entitled to a permanent 100% disability?
Yes, sir. Approximately a year later, I was given my permanent and total 100% disability.
So 2008 was...
My claim was filed in 2007. My temporary disability was approved 1 year later in November of 2008. My permanent and total was approved in November of 2009. Exactly. In fact, it's documented, sir.
Okay. Now, as part of that disability, was there any diagnosis as to what you were suffering from in terms of the permanent service-related disability?
To be accurate, a traumatic brain injury, TBI, which is documented, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is documented, bipolar disorder, which is documented, and of course the subsequent hearing disability, which is documented, and tinnitus in the right ear, which is documented, okay, all of which equals 100%.
Now, at any time between 2009 and August the 5th, 2012, did your status and or diagnosis change?
Yes, sir.
What was that change?
I became more susceptible to stress.
Okay. Did that change your diagnosis?
Yes, it did.
Okay. In what way did it change your diagnosis?
With Dr. Timothy Reed, he saw the change in me as my visits became more frequent. And during my treatment, he was introducing new medications and adjusting the medications I was on.
Okay. And was that new medication regime successful or helpful, I guess would be a better way to put it?
The risperidone, no. Abilify, no. So he introduced me to topiramate. Yes, topiramate worked well. And after a stress attack in March of 2011, I was introduced to Klonopin, which helped tremendously. And from there, my symptoms subsided. And that helped put me back on an even keel with Dr. Reed. And I maintained my visits, and he also allowed me to come as needed.
Okay. So from 2011 through August the 5th, 2012, the medications you were on were what?
Klonopin, topiramate, citalopram hydrobromide, which is known as Celexa, and Boost Bar.
And generally, were those medications were you able to function in a normal fashion when you took those medications as prescribed?
Yes, sir.
Now, let me ask you about three individuals and their significant others. I will start with Roger Hembree. Roger Picior. Roger Picior. Do you know Roger Picior?
Yes, I do.
And how did you know him?
Through Gary Hembree.
And when did you actually meet Roger Picior?
I want to say it was in the year 2000 or 2007 or 2008. He was a friend of Gary Hembree's.
Was he actually living on the Stone Street address during this period of time?
Repeat that, please.
When you first met Mr. Picior, was he living as a neighbor of yours on Stone Street?
Stone Street. Repeat that, please.
Smith Street, I'm sorry. I'm confusing you, and it's my fault.
That's okay.
Smith Street.
Smith Drive.
Smith Drive.
No, sir, he wasn't. He was just a friend who would visit and hang out with Gary and the kids.
Okay. What was your relationship with them, if any?
Specify relationship. What is my relationship to them?
What was your relationship to him?
A friend.
A co-worker or just a friend of a friend?
No, friend of Gary's, a friend of mine.
Okay. Did there come a point in time when he moved into your neighborhood?
Yes, sir. That was in 2012.
Okay. And do you recall approximately when in 2012?
Not exactly sure. I want to say it was after Kim Cast became Gary's girlfriend. And she moved in, and then it wasn't very long after that Roger and his boys moved in also.
Okay. And did Roger have any significant other that lived there with him?
Jessica was his girlfriend. I don't think she came to live there.
Okay.
She was just a regular visitor.
And that's Jessica Nobles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk about Gary Hembree. How did you know Gary Hembree?
When he first moved into the neighborhood, approximately the year 2000, no, strike that, 2002, I believe. I could be wrong, but I would have to check the records.
You had mentioned that he had a significant other, Kim Cast, that moved into his home in the neighborhood at some point in time. Do you recall approximately when that was?
Yes, sir. I want to say that was in the spring of 2012.
And what was your relationship with Mr. Hembree between 2002 and August 5th, 2012?
He's a friend.
Did you have any relationship with Ms. Cast?
Yes, sir. We had
in that intervening period, whenever she moved into August of 2012.
We had an acquaintanceship to begin with, and then we slowly built a working friendship.
Okay. Did you know Tim Blake or Bruce Timothy Blake?
Yes, sir. I did, as a matter of fact.
How do you know him?
From the year 2005, November, at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, I was introduced to him and his coworkers by a mutual friend of ours, Craig Tyree.
Okay. Did you become friends with him?
Only through a handshake and a big old smile.
Okay. Did there come a point in time when he moved into the neighborhood?
Yes, sir. It was April of 2012.
Between April of 2012 and August of 2012, what was your relationship with Mr. Blake and his family?
It was wonderful.
What do you mean by that?
It was a wonderful friendship.
Well, can you describe what you mean by wonderful? I understand that's a conclusion. What made it wonderful?
Bruce was just a joy to be around, and so was Carrie, and so were his two beautiful daughters.
Okay. Did there come a point in time where you helped them out?
We helped each other out, and yes, I helped him out financially, food. He helped me out. He mowed my grass for me when I couldn't mow it.
Okay.
We had a brotherhood.
All right. Did something happen in August of 2012 that affected your relationship with Mr. Picior, his significant other, and Mr. Hembree, his significant other, and Tim and Gary Blake?
The only event, narrow that down, please.
Let's move to when your relationship changed. I don't want to get you hung up on specific dates.
Okay.
The date that I asked you about was August 5th, 2012.
Okay, that only affected August the 5th was the day that Gary Hembree and I had an altercation.
Okay. Did that altercation with you and Mr. Hembree ultimately affect your relationship with Mr. Blake and Mr. Picior?
Yes, sir. That was the day that changed our relationship.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's talk about that then. What happened on August 5th that ultimately changed your relationship with all six of these people?
It started in mid-morning when we got a call from my wife's friend, Alyssa, whom she worked with, our mutual friend, and her significant other. And we realized that they had dropped off a birthday present Friday afternoon while my wife was vacuuming. And she didn't hear the door knock. So Jeremy and his son, Andrew, left it on the porch up by the door. And that was Friday. Sunday, August the 5th, she gets a call early in the morning, and Alyssa said, "Did Ava enjoy her birthday present?" Barbara says, "What birthday present?" And I'm sitting there at the table listening to the conversation on the phone with my wife and Alyssa. She gets off the phone and she says to me, "Billy, did you pick up anything off the porch for Ava?" I said, "No, I didn't." So we continued the conversation, and I asked my wife, "Well, who did you see Friday afternoon between the hours of 4 p.m. and 4:30 when Andrew and Jeremy dropped off the present?" She says, "Well, when I looked out the window during that time when I was vacuuming, all I saw was Destiny Hembree, Olivia, and Sterling riding around in the intersection. There was no cars, there was no traffic." I said, "Well, then I'll walk over and ask Gary if maybe one of the kids have it." At that point, my wife says, "Why would you want to do that?" I said, "Well, just to go ask and see if maybe we can't get Ava's present back and give it to her." And then I called Titusville Police Department and asked for an officer to go over and just be a witness. This way there would be no words exchanged, and there would be a witness to back up my question so that no one could accuse me of pointing a finger. And that's the incident that triggered it.
And did you go over and have a conversation with Mr. Hembree?
Yes, sir, I did. And the officer accompanied me, and he stood off at a distance where he could hear and see.
Okay. And how did Mr. Hembree react to that conversation?
Well, to my surprise, he was very angry. And he did not react well.
Okay. Did any of these other six people get involved in that conversation on that day?
No, sir. It was just Gary on his porch working on Kim's car.
Okay.
He opened the door and asked Destiny to come out. And when she saw the police officer, she burst into tears. And then Gary started to chastise me for making his daughter cry. And I apologized to him. I said, "Gary, that was not my intent. All I wanted was to ask if Destiny had my daughter's present." And I felt horrible for making Destiny cry. And at that point, I said, "Gary, I'm sorry." And we exchanged words, and I turned around and said, "Gary, have a nice day." And then I said to the officer, "I've made my point that the agreement will not be tolerated." And we walked back to my house, and if I remember correctly, I filled out an affidavit and then called for an officer to come retrieve it. That was the end of that.
Did you consider the matter closed?
Yes, sir, I did.
As a result of that, can you describe to the court what the aftermath of that was in terms of any of these 6 people?
Well, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I had got up to go over to the computer because I was going to go and check my email. And I noticed Gary walking across from his front porch into his front yard with his camera. He starts snapping pictures toward my backyard where my chickens were.
Let me stop you for a moment.
Yes,
Let's talk about the chickens. You were living in the city of Titusville, is that correct?
yes, sir, I did.
And you had chickens.
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you have chickens?
Soothing, calming therapy.
And was Mr. Hembree aware, to your knowledge, that you had the chickens?
Yes, sir, ever since the day I brought them home.
And was he aware of the purpose that you used the chickens for?
Yes, sir, he was.
Was he aware of your service-related disability?
Yes, sir, he was.
All of these 6 people, were they aware of your service-related disability?
Yes, sir, they were.
And when you saw Mr. Hembree on your property taking pictures of your chicken, what did you surmise?
Gary Hembree was not on my property, he was on his property.
Okay. When you saw him taking pictures of your backyard, of your chickens,
yes,
what did you surmise?
An invasion of my privacy.
As a result of those pictures, anything happened with the chickens?
Yes, sir. Code enforcement came and made a ruling and told me that the chickens were illegal in the city of Titusville because livestock is not permitted within city limits.
So you had to get rid of the chickens.
He told me I had one option, which was a $400 variance application. He said, however, that $400 variance does not mean you're going to be allowed to keep them. You may have a ruling against you, and they may tell you to get rid of the chickens because you have 25 chickens. You have above and beyond what normal people would have. I said, yes, sir. And at the time,
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Woodward,
Thank you.
let's kind of just jump ahead. You had to get rid of the chickens?
Had to get rid of the chickens, sir.
Thank you. Now, after this action by Mr. Hembree, was that an end of actions directed toward you as a result of your August 5th meeting with him? Do you understand that? Were there other things that these 6 people did to you after they managed to cause you to have to get rid of the chickens?
No, sir, actually that empowered them, and they continued their taunting and their teasing and their verbal harassment.
Okay. Now, at this point in time, you had talked only about Mr. Hembree. Was there a point in time when Mr. Picior, Ms. Nobles, Ms. Cast, and Mr. and Mrs. Blake joined in this activity?
Yes, there was a specific instance where it became a group effort when they realized, after Sergeant House informed them about the $400 variance fee and that I was losing my chickens, and that they saw me give my chickens up and leave the house, that it became a group effort. And then we heard the shouts of eat more chicken, chickens are gone, we won. And I can hear from my yard Sergeant House explaining to them about the $400 variance fee and how the chickens were leaving, and that it was now a dead issue.
Okay. And when they were engaging in this taunting behavior, did you pick up a gun, rush over there, and shoot and kill them?
Of course not.
Well, why not? You were angry about having to give up your chickens, weren't you?
There's no reason to shoot anybody.
Well, was that one occasion, the only occasion that they taunted you just about the chickens?
No, sir. There were multiple occasions.
Okay. And on those multiple occasions, did you go get your gun, go over to them and shoot and kill them?
No, sir.
Did this, as you described it, harassment take any other forms between August the 5th and August 29th?
Yes, sir. There was a specific instance after school started when my daughter was getting off the bus and I had walked up to the bus stop to escort her home because of the teasing of my daughter. Jeanie Huppert and the girls were sitting in the yard yelling to my daughter, "Hey, Ava," and taunting her. I made her get up into the yard and go to the front door, and I shouted to Destiny, "You be quiet and get in your house." And then Zachary Hembree said, "You be quiet, Billy." I said, "Zachary, you shut up and get in your house." Now, this was the time after we had applied for the injunctions. So I was on my sidewalk, and I was in my yard. But they were sitting in their yard taunting my daughter as she got off the bus. And this is why we had to escort my daughter everywhere she went in the neighborhood.
Okay. Up until this point in time, you had talked about different taunts being directed at you. Were there also problems involving actions that these 6 people and or their children were directing toward your wife and your children?
Yes, sir.
And was that a isolated situation or common situation?
No, sir, that was common. That's why we escorted my daughter and my wife to and from the house.
Okay. How did this behavior directed towards your children make you feel?
It bothered me.
Make you angry?
It bothered me and it unnerved me.
Did you react by going over and getting your gun and shooting people?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because you don't do that.
Okay. Now, between August 5th and August 29th, I think you've already alluded to it a little bit, but did the behaviors reach a point where you felt the need to actually seek injunctive relief?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And did the Coors, Nobles, Hembree, Cass, and Blakes also try and seek injunctive relief against you?
Yes, sir, they did.
And it's my understanding your father sought injunctive relief against them as well.
Yes, sir.
Now, why did you seek injunctive relief?
For protection against myself, my daughter, my son, and my wife.
Protection against yourself or protection for yourself?
Protection for myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. What was the reason that you felt like you needed protection for your family?
Because they were becoming more hostile and the threats were becoming more real.
What were the nature of the threats that caused you to seek court action protection?
Sodomy, rape,
Okay.
house burning,
Well,
death.
Was, again, these threats made on an isolated basis, or were they a common theme of that?
It became a common theme. Once they uttered them the first time, it became common.
Okay. Well, when they uttered them the first time, let's talk about who uttered them the first time and what was the second. We've heard somewhat about this, but I want to get your perspective on it.
I saw with my own eyes come out of Carrie Blake's mouth, reiterated by Jessica, and then I heard a "hell yeah, let's do it" by Roger as I'm facing them out in the street, to my disbelief, while I'm sitting on the other side of the street watching William.
Now, let me ask you a little bit about things that you and your family could hear at various places. When you were inside your house, even despite the fact that you have lack of hearing in one ear, could you clearly hear the threats and taunts that were directed at you and your family, even while you were in your house?
Yes, sir, I could, because they were very loud about it.
Okay. Did you have any problem in hearing and identifying who was making the threats and taunts toward you and your family when you were outside of your house, say in the street or near their home?
I could hear them very clearly.
Was it clear through your observations that your wife and children, even when they were inside the house, could hear these threats and taunts?
When I was present with them, yes.
And were you able to observe with your own two eyes the effect that these threats and taunts were having on your family and your children?
Yes, it was causing them to be scared and unnerving, and my son would break down in tears.
Now, when Carrie Blake made this threat to have your daughter sodomized, how did you feel about that?
It caused me to go into a complete rage.
Okay. Did you physically attack her?
No, sir.
Did you get a gun and shoot her?
No, sir.
Despite the fact that you were in a complete rage, you didn't go over there and physically attack her or shoot her?
No, sir, I did not.
How about when Jessica Nobles joined in on this threat about sodomy?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. How about when they upped the ante and added in that they were going to burn down your house while your family was asleep?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. What did you do in order to protect yourself and your family in that situation?
I went to seek help from the state attorney's office and Judge Moxley.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a little bit about, because we've heard various references about calling the police. Were the police called on multiple occasions just between August 5th and August 29th about these behaviors that were being directed against you and your family?
Yes, sir. They had called the police on me, and I had called the police to report their activity.
Okay. And were you aware of the fact, as been testified here, that neighbors of yours called the police to complain about what was being directed against you and your family during that period of time?
Only after the fact, sir.
Okay. But you later became aware of it.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
That is correct.
Now, at any point in time when the police were called, did the police take any action to protect yourself and your family?
No action to protect us, but they asked to see a video clip, which my wife provided, but there was no action taken to protect us.
Okay. Now, when you would call the police, what was the approximate response time between the time you would call and a police officer would actually arrive on the scene to assist? Well, if you want to call it to assist, to investigate.
One instance I remember vividly that I can recall vividly in my memory was when I left my house to walk my dog Marley. I left to go east on Smith Drive towards Rosella.
Okay. Mr.
Okay.
I didn't ask you to explain what happened. I may ask you to explain what happened. I'm asking you how long it took the police from the time you called them to the time they responded.
10 minutes for that particular instance that I was going to tell you about.
Okay. Was that 10-minute response time typical or particularly quick?
No, sir, that was typical. In fact, I considered it slow.
Okay. And even after they responded, were they able to provide any sort of assistance that lessened your concerns about your fears for yourself and your family?
No, sir, it did not.
Now, you had said that you sought injunctive relief, and there ultimately, and we've heard, there was a hearing with Judge Moxley. What was your feelings after that hearing?
I was highly frustrated
Why were you frustrated?
For many reasons.
Well, tell us.
That let me back up. That the court allowed perjury, number one. And number two, they did not allow us to present our case as we had prepared it. And number three, we were holed up in the courtroom while they were right down the hall less than 25 feet, waiting for us to leave the courtroom so they can re-engage us. I peeked outside the door myself and saw them standing there as a group in the jury room.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, now, we heard Judge Moxley's ruling itself, and essentially he ruled that after he heard their claims against you, that there wasn't enough evidence for them to prevail no matter what your witnesses said. Did you understand that?
Yes, sir, and I conceded.
Okay. But even without that, did it concern you that Judge Moxley, on multiple occasions, accepted what you considered to be a false claim against you to be a fact, and never allowed you to prove that that was a false claim?
Yes, sir.
And what was that claim, and what upset you about it?
The claim was that I had a firearm on my body, which I clearly did not have. I offered my body for inspection to the police. I even showed Tommy House, Sergeant Tommy House, where my weapon was stored in my house. I took him, showed him.
Okay.
I showed him on the scene that there was 2 empty knife sheaths on my body.
Okay. Now, admittedly, that's after the fact. Did you also have witnesses that were contemporaneous witnesses that saw you demonstrate to the Corps, Nobles, Hembree, Cass, and the Blakes that you were unarmed?
Yes, sir.
And those were the people who have testified earlier in this hearing as to exactly that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you had those people available to testify with Judge Moxley. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The fact that Judge Moxley made a factual determination against you of some significance without hearing all the evidence, did that cause you to have any concern about whether or not the courts could provide any protection to you and your family?
Yes, sir. It scared me.
Why?
It scared me because I sought help from the state attorney's office. The very people who are supposed to enforce the law, sir, and uphold the law. I sought help from the police department. And when Judge Moxley let me down, I was crushed.
Okay. Now, you actually got into a physical altercation with one of these people, and I apologize, I can't remember which one, at the parking lot right after the hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Now, am I correct? They had kept you all separate and actually asked you all to wait until the other people left the area. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And did you follow that request?
Yes, sir, we did, to the letter.
Okay. But even after following that request, did the other people leave the area?
No, sir, they did not.
What about what occurred caused you to react physically?
Seeing Gary Hembree leaned up against his car with his girlfriend Kim to his left, and him with his camera taking pictures of us leaving the courthouse. When I saw that, I made a beeline straight for him. And as I approached him, I threw the first punch, sir, right at the left side of his head. And I tried to land the second one, and somebody grabbed my arm. It was my dad. My dad grabbed my arm and wouldn't allow me to throw the second punch. But then I yanked my hand away from him. And at that point, I was pepper sprayed. And at that point, I lost vision. And then my dad, I could see, once I regained my vision, he was holding the hand of the guy who pepper sprayed. And then I tried to re-engage Gary, but he ducked inside his car. So I grabbed a hold of his belt. Tried to pull him outside of his car.
Okay. And that's when the court deputies intervened?
No, sir. My mom had a hold of me, and she was trying to pull me backwards.
Okay.
Kim was trying to engage me and pull me off of Gary. My wife was trying to pull me off of Gary. I pushed both of them off of me with one arm. My wife hit the ground. Her head hit the ground. And if it wasn't for her hair being in a bun, she probably would have got bloody. Kim hit the ground. She got back up. And at that point, I started to kick Gary with my shoes on his calf and on the back of his leg. And then my dad was able to get me completely off of him, and then the deputy arrived. And then I ceased.
Okay. And they ultimately wrote you a notice to appear on a battery charge. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. I was taken up into the upper tier.
I didn't ask you any other. They wrote you a notice to appear.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And you and your father returned home. Is that correct? To your home after the paperwork.
No, sir. We went to my dad's house.
Okay. And how long did you stay at your dad's house?
Long enough for him to get changed and to clean himself up.
Where did you go after your dad's house?
To my house.
Okay. When you arrived at your house, what scene greeted you at your house?
The group of them in Gary's front yard up by his house, laughing and giggling and carrying on. And as soon as they uttered the first words, I engaged them in a verbal battle.
And how long did that verbal exchange happen?
I don't believe it lasted longer than 15 seconds because my mom was highly upset at me.
Is that the one that was depicted and was played in court?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Now, as a result of everything that had happened on the well, first of all, did the once you went inside with your family, did the verbal response from the Hembrees, Nobles, the Corps, Cast, and Blakes cease at that point?
No, sir.
How long that night did that continue? It was after you went into your home.
On August 29th?
Yep.
That was a all-day affair.
Okay.
Let me correct myself, sir. I cannot answer for the time we left to go eat.
I'm only asking for the time you were there.
Yes, sir.
Any of these questions only apply for when you were there.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to correct myself, sir.
But while you were there,
While I was there, it continued while we were there.
now, as a result of the events through August 5th through August 29th, did you and your family reach any decision about whether or not you were going to remain in that neighborhood?
Please repeat that.
As a result of all this that happened from August 5th through August 29th, did you and your family reach a decision about whether or not your family was going to remain in that neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
What was that decision?
To leave.
Okay. What acts did you take in furtherance of that decision?
As soon as we realized that the chickens had to go, we had to go.
Okay.
That was after the ruling of the city code enforcement official. That was the day we knew we had to go.
Okay. What actions did you take in furtherance of your decision to leave?
My wife immediately, that day as a matter of fact, started researching rentals, apartments, and houses to find a place where we could go that would take pets. We had 3 cats and a dog.
Now, after the events of August 29th, did your father get involved in trying to help you all move?
Yes, sir. Financially and by his friend Bobby Mutter, a real estate agent.
Okay. And with the assistance of that finance and the assistance of Mr. Mutter, were you able to locate another house in another area?
Yes, sir, we were.
How did you feel about that?
So elated. We were able to go. We didn't have to be there anymore.
How close to you leaving the neighborhood were you when these events on September 3rd occurred?
Hold on 1 second, please.
Sure.
Go ahead, sir.
How close to you were you to leaving when the events of September 3rd occurred?
As soon as we were in Bobby Mutter's house and the check was accepted by the owners, my mom had put $10,000 down. I can't tell you the exact date, but when that day occurred and Linda had finalized some papers for us and we were signing, it wasn't the closing, but it was the financing. That day, my wife and I began seriously discussing moving her, Ethan, and Ava into my in-laws' house, Jack and Mary and Paige, on the north end of town. And me moving into my parents' house, which was just 1.5 miles away.
Why would you do that if you had a house and you're buying another house?
Because we weren't able to move into that house directly. The owners of that house were still living there. That man was taking care of his elderly mother.
I understand, but you knew that you had a closing date coming up. Why did you feel like you had to vacate your home that you were living in before you had finalized the purchase of the other home?
Because these people were seriously wanting to do us on. I wanted to get out of there. And I didn't want to be there anymore. And I didn't want my wife and children hurt. So we were going to leave. And that's all I wanted to do.
Now, during this period of time, did any of these actions by the Coors, Nobles, Hembrees, Cass, and Blake ever stop?
No.
Did these actions by them make you angry on occasion?
Yes, sir, they did. They unnerved me.
And when you were angry, I want to specifically talk about times when you were angry. There were periods of time where you were actually angry and enraged. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you get a gun, walk across the street, and shoot somebody?
No, sir.
Despite the fact that you were angry?
No, I did not.
Now, during this period of time, I want you to describe to the court how you became aware of all of the different things, because I know there are different categories. Were there things that you saw with your own eyes that Core, Hembree, and Blake's directed against you and your family?
Please repeat that.
During this period of time, in August 5th through September 3rd, or even the 29th through September 3rd, were there things that they did that you saw with your own eyes?
Yes, sir, there were.
Okay. Were there things that you saw them doing that you heard from inside of your house?
Yes, sir, there were.
Now, I understand that after the 29th, your parents purchased a surveillance system for you, or shortly before the 29th, and set that up that had a monitoring as well as a microphone.
That is correct, sir.
Approximately when did you install that surveillance system?
I don't remember, sir. I'd have to look at the receipt.
Okay, can you just give me an approximate time?
It was before the injunction.
Okay. So, once the surveillance system got installed, were there times when you saw what they were doing through the aid of the surveillance system?
Yes, sir.
Were there times that you saw what they were doing on the monitor during real time? You understand what as opposed to watching a tape later. We'll get into that later. But were there times where you actually looked at the monitor and you watched them through the monitor inside your house as to the things that they were doing and saying?
Yes, sir. I had that luxury.
Okay. And even when you were inside your house watching these events on the monitor real time, did you have to rely on the microphone of the surveillance system, or were you able to hear what was happening with your own ears?
They were extremely loud, so I could hear it without the microphone.
Okay. Now, in addition to actually seeing things directly and seeing things in real time on the monitor and hearing things both directly and from inside your house, were there occasions that you reviewed the videotapes to see things that they were doing even when you weren't necessarily observing them?
Yes, that is correct.
And the things that you saw when you reviewed the tapes, did they make you feel any better about your family's safety?
No, sir, they did not. In fact, they reinforced the need for us to leave.
Now, did you subsequently learn from other people, neighbors, your father, your mother, your wife, your children, about things that they had observed that these people had done when you weren't actually present?
Yes, I did, sir.
And what sort of things, let's start with your children. What sort of things did you learn from your children that they were experiencing at the hands of these people when you weren't there to observe?
For instance, when I would leave, go to the store and come back, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, anytime that you weren't around. You told us there were times where your children told you about things that happened while you were gone.
Yes, sir. I would come back and listen to my children.
What would they tell you about?
About the screaming, the yelling, the foul language, which highly upset my son because he did not grow up in that environment. And he's just a tender-hearted little boy. A little 4-year-old doesn't understand why grown-ups are yelling back and forth at each other. And my daughter doesn't understand violence either, especially at 12 years old. She just turned 12. And we did not raise her in a violent home, sir. So yes, when I would come home and listen to him, it upset me.
And when it upset you, sometimes it makes you angry.
It more unnerved me to see my children falling apart like this.
Okay.
Made me cry.
But I actually want to talk for a moment. Were there ever any occasions where it actually caused you to be angry?
Not angry, more sad.
Now, despite the fact that it unnerved you and it was sad, did you ever get a gun, go over there, and shoot him up?
No, sir, I didn't.
Learning this information from your children, did that cause you to be more or less vigilant in the way that you observe the things around?
More vigilant for their safety.
Were you concerned about their safety?
24/7, sir.
Let's talk about some of the things that your wife may have told you during this period of time. Things, the category we're in right now, we've already covered that there are things that you saw yourself, things that you saw real time on video, and things that you saw on tape on video. We've heard things that your children told you about. Were there things that your wife told you about regarding things that had occurred to her while you were not present?
Yes, sir. She kept me informed on everything that she knew about through her own eyes, through her own observation, and through her own hearing, plus what she could retrieve from the video, she would replay for me when I was not home.
Yeah.
So that it didn't.
What were some of the things that you learned from her that caused you concern about the situation?
Objection, hearsay.
Specifically, death threats were made known to me. That was highly unnerving.
Who, to your knowledge, made death threats that were directed towards your wife? Based on what she told you, whether it's true or not, based on what she told you.
Carrie, Blake, Roger, to the best of my ability, those were two specific people that she named.
How did the fact that death threats had been directed against your wife make you feel?
Highly unnerved and very upset, and reinforced the fact that we got to get out.
Despite the fact you were upset, did you react to those threats once you learned of them by going over to the property and shooting somebody?
No, sir. Just made me want to move even more.
Did you learn any information from your wife that led you to believe that any of these people may be armed or may have armed themselves?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
When they announced to her, we're going to shoot your dog. That was one very specific instance that highly unnerved me.
I want to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 5. It's a series of the same Facebook photo in different settings. Before the events of September 3rd, had you seen that Facebook photo before?
Yes, sir. My wife showed it to me on the computer.
And are you generally familiar with what a profile picture is on a
Yes,
Facebook page?
Yes, sir, I am. I have one myself.
What is your understanding of what profile pictures are used for on Facebook?
It's to identify your person, if you so choose, to let the people that you're affiliated with on Facebook see you.
And the picture that Mr. Picior chose to identify himself to people on Facebook is him pointing what appears to be a semi-automatic weapon at the camera. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
You recognize that weapon?
It's a AR-15,
What do you-
223.
Did specifically knowing at or around this time that this was a Facebook photo of him identifying himself, putting himself out to the world as this, did that cause you any concerns about him in relation to your family, yourself, your children, and whether or not he was armed?
Oh, yes, it did.
In what way?
Because that rifle right there can reach out and touch you accurately to 300 yards plus.
So from your perspective, it wouldn't matter whether he was standing on his property or not as to whether or not he could harm your family with that. Is that
That
correct?
weapon right there can go through a door, can go through glass, can go through stud walls, drywall. From his property, he can shoot into our house and kill us. That is a high-powered rifle, sir.
And did you ever learn anything that led you to believe that he was not constantly in possession of that weapon during the time period August 5th, 2012 through September 3rd, 2012?
No, I firmly believe he owned that weapon. That's him.
And did that belief have an impact, we'll talk in more detail about it, an impact on your decisions on September 3rd, 2012. Excuse me. September 3rd, 2012. You want me to repeat it? That was a terrible question.
Yes, please, because you lost me.
I'm sure I did.
Thank you, sir.
That belief that Mr. Picior had ready access to that particular weapon and that type of weapon, did it have an impact on the decisions that you made on September 3rd, 2012?
It absolutely did, sir.
And did you learn any other information from your wife that caused you to believe that any of these 6 people had access to weaponry or armed themselves?
I didn't learn it from my wife. I learned it first hand.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Right now, I want you to answer the question about your wife. You told me about her showing you that picture.
Yes, sir.
You told me about her talking about threats to kill her and threats to shoot your dog. Okay. Anything else that you learned from your wife that led you to believe that these people had ready access to firearms?
This instance and what I told you about earlier.
Okay. Now, did you, through your own observations, learn information that led you to conclude that these people had access to various forms of weaponry and were ready, willing, and able to use them?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
There was an evening. It was either the night the injunction was canceled or maybe an evening after that. Bruce Blake was walking his large white dog with the black harness and large silver chain that I had personally gave him as a gift after I got rid of my pet pig and didn't need it anymore. Walked right by my mom and I standing in our yard off camera and said, "We have shotguns now." Proceeded to walk past my mom and I as he made that statement. That highly upset me because I was not armed, sir. I had forfeited my arms to the deputy.
Okay,
So
this was during a period of time when the temporary injunction was in effect. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We had no arms. We were completely unarmed.
First of all, did you believe him, Bruce Blake, when he said he was armed?
Yes, sir, I did. Yes, sir, I did.
Did you ever learn anything that ever changed that belief that they had access to?
No, sir.
Did you yourself observe, and I'm going to exclude for a moment, we're going to talk about the night of the 3rd separately, but right up until the 3rd, did you yourself observe anything that led you to believe these people had access to arms, were armed, and were ready, able, and willing to use them?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
Up to the 3rd, after having multiple conversations with Carrie and Bruce during our friendship, I knew that Carrie's dad had been laid off from United Space Alliance, and one of the jobs that he had acquired was a pawn shop clerk, where there was ready access to weapons of all types, handguns, rifles, pistols, different types. And they also had a friend named Dennis, who was a gun collector. And Bruce had told me that he was a fine marksman. So I knew that they had access
Bruce
to weapons.
was a fine marksman, or Dennis was?
Dennis was a fine marksman.
Okay.
I knew for a fact they had access to weapons.
Okay. So you were concerned that they may have obtained weapons from one of these two sources. Were you able to either confirm or deny that concern?
That fact was confirmed on the night of September the 2nd, when I heard 4 distinct shots from a .22 automatic pistol and or rifle.
Again, I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Okay.
And again, let's leave the events of September 2nd, September 3rd separate, because I want to get them in sequence.
Yes, sir.
I want to know that up until that, the 2nd to the 3rd, I know it's the evening hours of the 2nd into the early morning hours of the 3rd. I want to leave that aside for
yes,
now.
sir. Okay.
I want to talk about information that you were in possession before those events. Were you able to either confirm or deny that they had weaponry from either of these two sources?
Yes, sir, because it came out of their own mouths that I heard.
Okay. When did that occur?
On multiple occasions.
Okay, and what were the things that they were saying?
We have guns.
Okay. Who was saying we have guns that you heard yourself?
Bruce,
Okay.
for one.
You told us
Right,
about the
there's
shotgun. Was there comments other than the shotgun comment by Bruce?
No, sir. There was another instance when he's standing on the street corner, and I
Okay.
heard it come out of his mouth. We got guns.
Okay. Anyone else in this group ever acknowledged to you that they had access to weapons?
Yes, sir. Roger had made a comment
What was
while I
wrong?
was standing out my yard.
What was his comment?
Yeah, we got a gun. It was a threatening comment to let me know that they are armed.
And did you believe them when they told you that?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever learn any information that caused that belief to waver?
No, sir.
Now, I want to leave guns aside. Well, first of all, I covered all the things that you personally heard about guns.
Yes, sir, you have.
Okay. Were there other types of things that they threatened in terms of weaponry that you personally observed that they had access to and were threatened to use?
Yes, sir. They had 2 aluminum baseball bats. They had a golf club, 1 golf club. They had part of a golf club. And Bruce Blake had multiple pieces of cast iron, steel at his residence.
Did you know that he was a welder and he welded these?
Yes, sir. I'd been to his house many times, and I'd seen the steel that he had.
Okay. Did you ever actually observe them in physical possession of any of these things, making threats against you and or your family?
Yes, I had on multiple occasions Roger swinging a baseball bat saying, "Hey, batter, 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 batter. Hey, batter, batter, swing." And also with his golf club.
Okay. What did he do with the golf club in terms of threatening behavior?
When my dad and I were outside at the end of our driveway, he said, "I'm going to take this golf club and I'm going to cave your head in, old man." He used the F word that I'm not going to repeat.
Now, even when you observed him make these threats with a baseball bat and or a golf club in hand, did you arm yourself and rush over there and shoot him?
No, sir, I did not.
Why not?
Because you don't do that.
Next category of people who may have told you things that caused you concern about weapons. Did you ever learn from any of your neighbors any information that caused you to believe that any of these 6 people may have access to firearms, several firearms?
As far as neighbors are concerned, no. Only my conversation with Scott and Lydia Crow.
Okay. And what was that conversation you had with Scott and Lydia Crow, and what information did you learn there that caused you concern?
Well, it was when I witnessed Carrie Blake sitting in Gary Hembree's yard with the other girls, pointing her finger directly at Scott Crow while he and I were talking in our backyard. And she had pointed her finger in this fashion and said, "Pow, pow," to Lydia, and then went pow to Scott and said, "You better shoot him twice. He's fat."
Now, we saw some of that behavior on a videotape. Was that the same incident that you were talking about, or was it a different incident than was played in court on videotape?
No.
The cast said there were 2 of them.
There was 2 instances. The one you saw on videotape was them on the street corner on city property. The one Scott and I witnessed and Lydia witnessed was with the girls actually in Gary Hembree's yard,
Okay.
not out in the street.
Now, did you know about both of them or just the one?
Just the one that I witnessed.
Okay. And you had not learned about the other one until
No, sir.
after the events of September 2nd and 3rd?
No, sir. Can I correct myself?
I'm sorry?
Can I correct myself?
Yes, sir.
The one that I saw with Carrie out in the yard was aimed towards Marty and Larry Malden. Marty and Larry had told me about it, but I didn't bother watching the video.
Okay.
That was inconsequential to me because it didn't involve me.
Okay. Was there any other information that you learned from any of your neighbors that caused you concern about weapons, weaponry, or these six people's ability to carry out their threats against you or your family?
The weapons that I'm about to disclose to you are living weapons, and that would be their large pit bull dogs.
Okay. Now,
Highly trained.
let me, again, so that I keep my categories straight.
Yes, sir.
If we're talking about the pit bulls and pit bulls being used as weapons, right now I want to keep it in the category of things that you learned from your neighbors that caused you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I got off track. I apologize.
Well, if your neighbors told you about pit bulls or anything of that nature, that's fine. I'm going to back up in a minute and put them in the category of things you observed. But I just want to know if you learned anything from your neighbors. I'll make this broad enough in terms of pit bulls. Not things that you actually observed. We can get to that in a moment.
Thank you.
Okay? But things that someone else told you about how they used their pit bulls that caused you concerns for yourself or your family's safety. Anything you learned from any other source other than what you observed?
No, sir.
Okay. Now let's back up and talk about things you personally observed about their use of these pit bulls as a weapon that caused you concern for safety of yourself, your family, or your children.
Thank you, Rick. The pit bulls were used as a weapon against me on an occasion when I had left my house to walk the dog. They turned two of them out, one large white one and one smaller black one.
And did that cause you concern for your own personal safety?
Mine and my family.
Okay. And approximately what time period was that? Well, let me just ask, it may be obvious since you've been in jail since September 3rd, but did you observe this before the events of September 2nd and 3rd?
It was during the time period when we filed for the injunction and the injunctions were canceled. It was during that time period.
I want to back up and ask you a question about the injunction. You mentioned that your weapons had been taken away.
I forfeited them. Yes, sir. They were taken away.
There was a court order for you not to be in possession of any firearms.
That is correct.
For a period of time. And did you obey that court order?
100%, sir.
Did you have any concerns about whether or not you were placing your family at greater risk because you did obey that court order?
I was placing my family at risk. However, 911 was always on speed dial.
Okay.
And I had yard tools at my disposal that I could use as makeshift weapons if I needed to.
Okay. But despite your concerns that this was placing your family at greater risk, you still obeyed that court order anyway, right?
I had to because I had a deputy come to my house and inspect my house.
Okay. But was the deputy there 24/7?
No, sir, he wasn't.
You had the ability to, run out and get a different gun or borrow it from a friend or things like that.
No, sir, I did not.
Why not? Did you have the ability to do it, or did you choose not to do it? That's the difference I want to know.
I did not have the ability to it, nor did I choose not to, and I chose to obey the law by not going and getting a weapon.
Okay. Why didn't you have the ability? Had you chosen not to obey? Was there nowhere that you could think of that you could obtain a weapon in violation of that court order should you choose to violate that court order?
There was nowhere for me to legally obtain a weapon other than purchase.
I'm not talking about legal. We all know it's illegal.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Violation of court order. What I'm trying to figure out is the only reason that you obeyed the court order because you couldn't find any other way around that court order? Or did you obey the court order in spite of the fact that if you had wanted to, you could break it if you wanted to?
I'm not quite sure I know where you're going with this. Please help me. I don't even understand your question.
Were there people you knew that had guns during that period of time that if you had asked them, they would have given it to you?
I did know people who had guns, but they would not have given them to me.
All right. Was there information that you learned from your parents that you did not personally observe regarding weapons in the possession of these 6 people?
Yes, sir.
What was that information?
My dad had told me about them in possession of the baseball bat and the golf club in the hands of Roger Picior.
Did anyone ever share with you, did your father ever share with you this information that he overheard the actual day of the 2nd about guns?
No, no, sir.
Have you shared all of the information that you have regarding their ability to arm themselves and carry out their threats against your family? Well, let me back up. One of the threats was apparently to burn your house when you all were asleep. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Very loudly.
Okay. I know this may sound obvious, but were you aware of whether or not they had the ability to carry out that threat? Did they have access to gasoline, matches, things that would allow them to burn your house while you were asleep?
That is correct. They all smoked cigarettes. So, yes, they had access to fire.
Did you take that threat seriously?
All the time.
Were you concerned about that threat?
Yes, sir, I was very concerned.
Mr. Woodward, I'd like to now bring you up to the date of September 2nd.
Okay, sir.
How did you spend the morning, early morning hours of September 2nd?
We all pretty much got up, as usual, and prepared ourselves for a day of activities with our Aunt Jo and Uncle Kenny, Beth and Becca, and their grandson from South Carolina.
When did you start those activities?
I want to say maybe before lunch. I want to say we may have had lunch with them as a family.
All right. And what kind of things were you doing with that? First of all, was that at your house or someplace else?
No, we left our house.
Okay.
In fact, we were happy to leave.
Okay. Have there been any problems before that affected your mood or anything like that before you left to go over to their house?
No, in the morning, actually, everything was quiet.
Okay. And how long were you over there?
Let's see, I can't remember if we met at my in-laws' house or if we went straight to the Ramada Inn. But we went swimming at some point that day. And we also went to the Brevard Zoo on one of those days. I don't remember if it was the second. We came back and we went swimming. And at some point we had dinner. And then we celebrated on the second what was going to be an early anniversary for our 13th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Sure.
I want to show you Defendant's Exhibit 6. When was that picture taken?
Oh, that was September the 2nd.
And what was happening then?
That was our anniversary dinner and cake that we had. And that's my wife, my daughter, my son, and myself over at my wife's mom and dad, Jack and Mary and Paige. It was such a wonderful day. Never felt so free. Yes, sir. That was the evening of September the 2nd.
I think you already alluded to it, but what was your mood?
Happy. Ecstatic. Wonderful.
Were you premeditating murder of anybody that night?
That was the furthest thing from my mind, sir. That was our 13th anniversary of marriage.
And at this point in time, as part of the celebration, your plans to move into this house?
You got it.
Were you all talking about the house?
With our family? Yes. That was one of the topics of discussion, was our dollhouse.
Your dollhouse?
My wife picked it up. And it had the most beautiful blue carpet. It had a sunken living room. Had plenty of space in the backyard for our chickens and our dogs. It had 4 bedroom, I believe it was 2 bath, if I'm not mistaken. And it had a beautiful garage for my tools, for my workbench, and it had a small front yard. It was in Imperial Estates, down where we were going to enroll my son in school after he had got out of Indian River City Methodist preschool, pre-K. Yeah, our plans was to enroll him in Imperial Estate School, where he is now going. So it was in the part of town where I had spent my early childhood. So I was very familiar with the south end of Titusville, and that's where we wanted to be. It was far away from them. And yes, we spent time talking about it.
Yeah. While you were celebrating these things, did something happen that caused you to cut that evening short and head back home?
I don't remember. I remember talking to my dad on the phone, but I don't remember anything that really alarmed me other than the fact that the neighbors were just harassing my parents.
Well, how did that make you feel?
It irritated me.
Did you learn any information from your father in that telephone call that caused your concerns to escalate in any way?
It did, because I was worried about their safety and not being there with them. I was concerned. But my wife and I and my children, we were away from the house, so half of my anxiety was with my parents and the other half was with my family. So I'll split down the middle. That's where the irritation came in.
Did they have any suggestions as to how, again, I don't want you to repeat what somebody said, but did they have any suggestions as to what you yourself could do to help you protect your family?
Arm myself.
And did you follow that advice?
Yes, sir, I did.
In front of them?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was that when your father retrieved your firearms and returned them to you in front of them?
Yes, sir.
Now, did they, in any way, shape, or form, try and prevent your father from returning his firearms to you?
No, sir, it was encouraged.
Now, after they left, did you take these firearms that had been returned to you and go over and shoot Bruce Place?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, he just told you had a shotgun, right?
There's no reason to go shoot somebody.
He just told that for weeks he had been telling you that he was going to harm your family, right?
Yes, sir, he did.
So why didn't you just immediately run over and shoot him?
There's no reason to shoot him.
I know that we've been through this exercise with some other people, but first of all, I want to talk about, you've had occasion to sit down with Mr. Berry and myself and go through the videotape surveillance of the evening of the 2nd, early morning hours of the 3rd. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And you were able to assist us in identifying voices and identifying things both from what you heard on the tape and things that you recall from your own memory to help us identify what was being said that might not always be as clear on the videotape. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
As a matter of fact, this is your best recollection, both as refreshed by listening to and watching the tapes and your own memory of what was being said during the times on these on this videotape. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that a fair and accurate transcript from your perspective of what you remember being said, both from your refreshed memory and from your current memory?
Yes, sir.
And we actually even went over it again last night just to make sure that it was up to date and that there hadn't been anything that occurred that caused you any concerns about its accuracy. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I have a question you need to ask regarding this. You've got one, we've got one, they've got one. Are we going to go through this thing and he's going to say line by line what he thinks was said?
It's going to be pretty, I'm not going to go through this document with him to review what was said. I'm going to go through the video with him at various times. And if it's not clear, I'm going to ask him what he believes or identify the list as. Yes, sir, I am. Let me just...
I mean, it would be important for me to know
Right.
what he recalls being said or hearing, as opposed to what he thinks he saw or heard on a recording that he reviewed last night with counsel. If he doesn't know the distinction, then I guess he'll just say whatever he's going to say. But the only relevant concept to me is what he heard the evening of all these events. It really is irrelevant what he thinks he saw on a recording.
I am not going to ask him any questions. I'll make it clear from the beginning, make it clear right now. All of the questions I'm asking him are in the context of what he remembers occurring that night. The video itself is being used to demonstrate what he recalls. And I'm even going to try and make it clear in terms of whether or not it is a recollection that was refreshed in any way from viewing the video. But this is would either be a direct recollection or a refreshed recollection.
Well, if he has a recollection, he doesn't need to watch a video to tell us what's in it, correct? If he has no recollection, there's a predicate for refreshing a recollection.
I understand. So everything that we're going to be testifying right now is based on what I believe is recollection-based. That's the context that I'm asking you. And Mr. Woodward, I would instruct you, if there's anything that I ask you that you do not remember, please let me know if you don't remember so that the court can understand whether you are testifying from your recollection or not.
Basically, from memory.
From memory. Recollection is memory. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Should use the language that you...
So you want me to differentiate from memory or firsthand?
No, sir. I want you... The court is concerned. The court doesn't want you to testify. Just tell the court what you see on the screen or hear on the screen.
Okay.
The court wants to know whether or not what you are saying is from your memory of what you observed that night.
Correct.
Okay?
I understand you now.
So that is the context that I want you to answer all of my questions. If you get to a point where you're seeing something and I ask you about something and you don't recall, please ask me. Tell me that you don't recall.
Right, well, let's set up some ground rules for that, because when the predicate for refreshing recollection has to do with, number one, whether the witness has a present recollection of the events.
Right.
If the witness has no present recollection of events, then the witness can be shown something that might refresh his recollection so that he can testify truthfully and accurately about those past events. Whatever you're showing him doesn't need to be published. I don't need to be here when you do it, and frankly, I don't want to be here when you do it. So if it comes to pass that you want to show him some of the video as refreshed recollection, just let me know. We'll take a recess. You can play the whole thing for him, but there's not going to be any need to play it, back it up, play it, back it up, play it, back it up, and have him repeat all this stuff that he's reading off the recording to refresh his recollection. So if you want to refresh his recollection with the video, you can do it. He's gotten to watch it 3 or 4 times already during this week-long hearing, but you're not going to do it in open court. You can do it with him sitting here, but I don't need to be here for it. He can testify from memory if he has a memory. If you need to refresh his memory, You can refresh it by playing the video to your heart's content, and whenever you're done refreshing them, I'll come back and we'll resume.
Okay, Judge, I'm not planning on, maybe I've confused the court, but when I want to play the video in open court and make part of this record is because I believe Mr. Woodward will testify that certain things from his memory that were said at certain times that other witnesses have said something else was said or someone else said that were said by different people. I don't know of any other way to keep this in context other than to go through this with him.
Well then, why all the hoops over the informal transcript? Why the discussion about what he remembers and what he doesn't remember?
I wanted to let the court have, there is any series of case law about the trier of fact listening to a video and having a even unverified transcript available while they're listening to it to aid them in understanding what they're hearing. The case law clearly says that that's a proper procedure and that the trier of fact is to rely on what they hear and not be unduly influenced by the transcript, but that is the context that I am offering the unverified transcript for your use as an aid as you're listening to this.
Okay, it's here. I've already heard this video at least twice so far, maybe even more. You're welcome to proceed how you will. The transcript is not going to help me because if I can't hear it, me reading it is not going to help. Go ahead.
Judge, my only question is, if we're just showing it now for him to say what he heard on the record.
No. Go ahead. Let's just get it done. However you want to do it. Go right ahead and do it.
I want to take you back to approximately $2,100 that evening.
Yes, sir.
Where in your home were you $2,100? You were inside your house, right?
That's approximately 9 o'clock in the evening.
Yep.
I believe we were still on the way home. I don't believe we had just got to our house, but we were on our way home.
Okay. Do you recall arriving there?
Shortly after 9, I believe.
Okay. And who did you arrive with?
My son in my truck.
Okay. Did your wife drive separately back from this family outing?
Yes, sir. We took separate vehicles.
Okay. And when you and your son arrived back at your property, what were you greeted with?
The group of them over there on their property, mumbling, talking, an occasional shout.
Okay. What things were you that were directed at you during that period of time do you recall right at or around the time that you arrived?
It was actually, to be honest with you, it was actually calm, to our surprise.
Okay. And how long did the calm last?
Not very long.
Okay. Do you recall Bruce shouting anything to you at or around, again, the time frame that I'm drawing you to would be around 21:40, 40 minutes after the hour?
Let's see. We get home. I take my son inside. I come back outside to get some wet clothes out of my truck. My dad and I talk briefly. Go back inside. My parents leave. While my wife is washing the children and getting them ready for bed and getting for shower. Just vulgarities.
Okay. What type of vulgarity?
Things that I don't want to repeat. Maybe
I'm sorry,
F
you
you.
need to repeat them because we need to have the court, we need to have an accurate record. I know that's not the way that you prefer to talk, but Go ahead.
Can I say the F word?
You can say exactly what you heard, verbatim.
Well, I'm 40. We were inside the house. And through the window, no, I won't say if it was Bruce or Roger or Gary. And I won't even testify to what exactly the vulgarity was.
How did the fact that you heard these vulgarities make you feel?
Well, it unnerved me. And
Now, was it male voices at that point
yes,
that you heard
yes.
through there?
yes, it was definitely deep male voices.
Did you hear anything about anybody saying something to the effect of,
Objection leading.
Sustained.
hear any talk about fighting?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Who's on the vehicle?
That's myself and my son.
Who is the gentleman in shorts?
That's my dad.
Can you specifically identify who's shouting in the background?
That's Bruce Blake, sir.
Was it your perception? Could you strike that? Do you have a belief as to who those comments were being directed toward?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Hearing those comments, did they cause you any concern that evening?
At that particular moment, I was inside the house.
Did you hear them from inside the house?
No, sir. At that particular moment, I was helping my wife prepare our son for
Okay.
about.
So you did not actually hear those particular comments by Mr. Blake,
That is correct, sir.
except on the tape.
That is correct.
Okay. The comment, watch it, they may run over you. Is that something that you recall hearing that evening?
Not only did I recall hearing it, but if my camera was pointed towards my front alcove where my front door is, I was standing outside my house. And I heard the first comment from Roger Picior when he said, "Bitch." I heard that plain as day. In fact, you can rewind it and play it again. I'm standing outside my house when my parents leave to make sure that they didn't rush my parents. Rush the truck with the bats, a golf club, or even a pistol. Because my parents had pulled straight into my driveway, and they had to back out and do a Y turn and then leave. So I stayed on my front porch outside the house to make sure that they exited safely. So yes, I heard because I was outside my house.
Okay. And you may have already pretty much expressed it just by the way you're testifying, but how did those comments directed towards your parents make you feel?
Highly unnerved at that point.
You had your guns back,
No.
right?
No,
I
sir.
mean, were available to you if you wanted to go get them, right? They're in the house.
They were in the house stored properly.
Okay. Did you go back, get your guns, go over and shoot Roger?
No, sir, I didn't.
In a position where you could hear that comment.
Yes, sir, because I remained on my front porch for over 5 minutes.
Can you identify who's making that comment?
Yes, sir, that's Bruce Blake. You stop that video right there.
Yes, sir.
You can hear me talking on my front porch to my wife. Can you not? That is my voice.
It's all right, Bill. So you can actually hear your voice.
I'm outside my house talking.
Okay, that's fine.
I wanted you to hear that for yourself.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Stop video, please. Did you hear the door close? Did you hear that click?
What did you hear? Don't ask me questions. Tell the court what you heard that was of significance and whether or not you had heard it that night.
I heard my front door close because I just went back inside and closed my door.
Okay?
Thank you.
So you're back in your house at this point.
Yes.
During this period, based on your recollection of the events of that night, did you see or hear anything inside your home that caused you heightened concern for your family during just this hour that I skipped ahead?
During that hour?
Right.
No, sir.
Okay.
Nothing.
All right. Just want to make sure.
stop right there, sir. The tall, skinny male right there in the spotlight is Gary Hembree.
Okay.
He and Roger Picior.
Now let me stop you for a moment.
Yes,
Because
sir.
again, we need to keep clear for the record.
Yes, sir.
I know that you're stopping here. First of all, first question. Was this something that you saw and observed while you were in the house, this approach to the home?
That is correct.
Where were you when you saw and observed this approach to your house?
If you were to see where my trailer is,
Yes, sir.
right there,
Yes, sir.
if you were to go left of where my trailer is, the side of my house that makes a 90-degree corner
Yes, sir.
is all glass,
Okay.
all windows.
And where were you standing in relation to that glass?
2 windows back from the corner. Every window is 2 feet. So I was standing 4 feet back from the corner, looking through my blinds and listening.
And why were you looking through your blinds and listening to that?
Because I'm hearing them talking about fighting.
Now, as you're watching them walk up, still on their property, but towards your property, and the things that you were hearing that night, what is your state of mind?
Heightened alert, being unnerved that now they're coming out towards my direction.
And you said you heard them talking about fighting. What things do you recall them saying about fighting?
Fighting me. That's what I can hear from my house.
Okay.
They were not quiet about it.
Now, Mr. Woodward, what I'm going to do, I want to take you through this sequence, and then I'll stop it. Please let the whole sequence. I know that it's important to you with certain things that you could bring it to the attention of the court, but for this particular sequence, I want you to let the whole thing play through, having laid the predicate. You're constantly listening and watching at your window during this whole period of time. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And you are in a position where you can hear things. You're not relying on the recording or listening to the recording on a later date. These are things that you actually can recall in terms of happening at that moment in time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And when I told you that I was 2 windows back, when I saw them approach in my direction, I knelt down and cracked my window and gave myself an air gap. Now I can hear perfect.
Okay.
I don't even need the camera. I don't even need the I don't need anything. I can hear and I can see.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now, one other question.
Yes, sir.
Even despite your heightened alert, even despite your concerns, have you armed yourself at that moment in time?
No, sir. I didn't need to.
Okay. You do it like this. again, this whole segment of time, you're listening at your window, you're able to actually hear these comments. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Now, rather than me play them for the court, tell the court the types of things that you recall hearing from these people during this, 10-minute sequence, a little less than 10-minute sequence.
There was a specific threat made to my daughter Ava.
What was the specific threat that
It
you
was a
recall?
sexual threat made to my daughter Ava.
What was the nature of that sexual threat?
It was a sexual innuendo, and it was about involving money to the tune of $25, and that
Who made that threat to you?
was Bruce Blake.
Okay. How did that threat make you feel?
That bothered me.
Did it bother you as much as the day that they had threatened to sodomize your daughter?
Oh yes.
Did you get your gun and go shoot Bruce Blake because he made that threat?
No, sir, I did not.
Why not?
Because you don't do that.
Well, did you hear any other kinds of comments that you recall during this 10-minute sequence?
Yes, sir, there were other comments referring to sexual misconduct on their part toward my wife
Okay.
and toward my daughter.
All right.
But when they mentioned the word Ava, that was a big cause for alarm, because now they had mentioned her by name.
Okay. And you specifically recall hearing them, not what was captured on...
No, I'm still at my window.
Okay.
I still have my eyes focused on this crowd.
Okay. And you'd also mentioned earlier that you had heard some comments about fighting you and dressing. Did you hear any more comments along those lines during this 10-minute period?
Yes, sir, I did.
Who was making those comments, if you could identify them?
Bruce, Roger, Gary. There was Gary Hembree at the corner.
And how did the threats about fighting make you feel?
Well, at that point, it started to bother me. Because I didn't want to be lured out of my house to a gang war.
Now, did you
Look at
see
the size of that crowd.
Were they holding any weapons at that point in time?
Somebody had in their hand a blunt instrument.
Okay.
Yes, sir. There was a blunt instrument in the hand of somebody at the corner. And you're going to hear the coming up. I'm going to tell you what you're going to hear.
Well, tell me what you expect to be shown up, what you recall will be coming up in this time sequence. Take a moment.
What scared me is when they were sitting down at the corner and they have this blunt instrument and they start beating on the concrete. They have a piece of steel that you can vividly hear, and I can hear, and I'm watching them.
Okay. And what was it that specifically concerned you about that?
Because it's a piece of steel. Now, I'm going to make one thing clear. When I got down on my knees, if you take the line of sight from my window, I have to stand up to look over my trailer.
Okay.
All right? I got down on my knees to crack the window so that I can have the sound come in. I'm standing up to look at the crowd. I've still got visual on these people.
Okay.
All right? So I want to make clear that there's a trailer and there's the crowd. There's a line of sight directly from my window to that crowd.
Do you recall who had the piece of steel?
Bruce Blake was sitting at the corner with it in his hand, beating on the street corner.
Just play it for me.
Excuse me, Greg. Please stop the video. I need to tell you about this conversation that just took place, that just passed by.
Okay.
They're conspiring to lure me out of the house.
What did you hear that led you to that conclusion?
They wanted to get me to fight so that they would have a reason for me to go to jail.
What did you hear that led you to that, not the conclusion you're reaching, Mr. Woodward? What words did you hear from what people that you recall that led you to the conclusion they were trying to get you to come out and fight?
I'm watching the two girls, Carrie and Jessica, talking to each other about a fight between me and one of the males out in the street to get me out. If they can get me out of the house into a fight, then we can get them to go to jail.
Okay. And you can hear that clearly from where you were.
I can hear that perfectly. That was cause for alarm for me. That's why I asked you to stop that, because I wanted to bring that to your attention.
And Mr. Woodward, let me ask you a question. You've already told us about that you saw Mr. Blake with this piece of steel and heard whatever he was doing, and that caused you concern. Even if none of these people had had anything in their hand, did you have any concerns over their ability to cause physical harm to you just with their bare hands?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because Bruce Bruce can fight, Roger can fight, Gary can fight. They outweigh me. Plus with the three girls, that's 6-1.
Now, there were various times when you offered to fight them one-on-one. Is that correct?
One-on-one, yes, sir, but not 6-on-1.
Was that your concern that night?
Yes, sir, I was. Let's go to 22:38:56. Try and move quickly through this. But
Are you going backwards now?
I am going backwards because I think I skipped what I was trying. Mr. Barry knows the sequence a whole lot better than I do. Is that what you were referring to with the steel?
That is correct. Thank you.
Now, let me do that. You hear these people talking, you hear them making a plan to try and get you out on the street and get you to fight and get you put in jail. How are you feeling at that point?
At that point, pretty doggone scared, because I just heard Roger yell, "Come on out, bitch!" I'm not ready to die at this point. I'm staying in my house.
Have you had any concerns on whether or not they're going to wait to see if you come out or not, or whether they're going to do something else?
Yes, sir, there were concerns.
At that point in time, even with those concerns, had you armed yourself yet?
No, sir.
Did you have any thoughts about going out and getting your gun and just shooting all 6 of them for what they'd done up until that point in time?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, at or around this point in time, did you hear anything that led you to be concerned that they might have any other weaponry other than that steel piece of whatever it was?
Knowing that they had firearms, bats, and a golf club, yes, I was caused for concern, if that is the question.
Yes, sir. At any point that they're doing that you heard something, some sounds that led you to conclude that they not only had a firearm, but they were doing something.
Yes, sir, right after this engagement, where they're talking about luring me out into the street to fight, to get me to go to jail, they walked back up into their tent area, and he test fire a firearm. And I distinctly heard from my house, with my window cracked, 4 cracks of a .22 automatic firearm. Unmistakable cracks of a .22 automatic rifle or pistol. Now, it was loud enough that I am willing to testify that it is a pistol because of the loudness of a short barrel.
Okay. Was there any doubt in your mind at that point in time, first of all, that those sounds were coming from the Hembree, Blake, McCord party area?
Yeah, because as soon as they walked back to the tent area, I can hear a discussion that was muffled, and I heard bang, bang, bang! Coming right at my window. It's a line of sight. It didn't come from behind me. It didn't come from the north of me or the south of me. It came right straight from due west. That is a .22 automatic. I know because I own one. My dad owns one. He owns 2, a pistol and a rifle.
So at that point in time, what's going through your head?
Death for me and my family. Now they're serious. They just talked about, with me hearing, that they want to draw me out to the road for a fight and get me to go to jail. They just made an incursion to my property and made some horrible references about raping my wife. Now they just walked up into their yard and test fired a weapon.
Why didn't you call 911?
They don't come. The last time I called the cops, it took them 10 minutes to get there. Left me hanging down the road with my dog. Out and exposed. With nothing to protect me.
So what did you do after you heard that? Those sounds.
At 11 p.m., exactly as my microwave oven digital readout, I took a Klonopin and tried to relax myself.
Okay. What else did you do?
Started deep breathing to relax and calm myself back down. Because now what they were talking about started to unfold before me, which was to kill us. Now 3 of them. Now I've got firearms that have been test fired. I've got an incursion upon my property, which I've witnessed, firearms which I've heard, and the threats to get me to get out there in the road so they can get me in jail. That's 3.
After you take the Klonopin, take some deep breaths to calm yourself. What action, if any, did you take?
Continue deep breathing and just relaxing. went back, checked on my wife and kids briefly to make sure they were still sleeping. That they did not hear. I wanted to make sure they did not hear what happened. Unfortunately, something startled my daughter, and she came out as I was coming out, and she greeted me in the hallway, and she said, "Daddy, what happened?" I said, "Nothing. I lied to my own daughter so that she wouldn't be alarmed." I said, "Come on, baby, let's go back to bed." And I went back and I tucked her in, and I gave her a kiss on the forehead. I said, "Baby, everything's all right. Daddy's awake. I'm watching the house, and everything's fine." I hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry, baby, I lied to you. I did not want her to be alarmed, so I tucked her back in bed. And I went and checked on my wife, and she was okay. She was drifting off to sleep at that point. Her medication was working rather quickly, and she had gone to bed about 10:45, so she didn't hear the firearm. And my son was completely whooped at this point. He was shortly in bed and sleeping right after his bath, so I know he didn't hear it. So after I tucked my little girl back into bed, I went back out and just kept my eye on the corner. Kept him under surveillance.
Oh, midnight. Okay, I want midnight.
All right, so you're moving ahead another hour?
I think at this point, we're moving to right at midnight.
All right, so about another hour from the piece you were just at?
Yes, sir. Now, during this hour, after you've heard what you believe to be shot, are you still in the house?
Yes, sir.
You still watching and waiting?
Yes, sir.
Anything of significance happen that increases your alarm?
After 11 o'clock, as I'm calming myself down, I turned the video off the TV and turned the Wii on and play Star Wars Wii for about 15 minutes, just to relax. That's all I wanted to do was just relax. And I went to the kitchen and I got me a snack. Just a small bowl of cereal just to be on my stomach since I had taken the Klonopin. I didn't want it to upset my stomach. And the milk would coat my stomach. So approximately 20 minutes go by from 11 p.m. when I took the Klonopin. Had my cereal and played the Wii. So some things were going on outside that I could hear, but I didn't react to. Nothing that had me alarmed at that point.
Anything specific or just noises?
Noises, taunting, average run-of-the-mill stuff that had been going on. The Klonopin started to work about 20 minutes into the evening, after 11. I started to relax. And I started to feel better.
I take you up to right around midnight.
Can I stop you right there, Greg?
Sure.
Do you see that flickering light right there?
That's what I was about to draw your attention to, Mr. Woodward. Did you see that flickering light?
From my kitchen bay window, I'm watching them with a device trying to get something lit. Now, what bothers me is that it's dark over there. My fear, as I'm watching this, is a Molotov cocktail coming through my glass window if they get it lit and run up to my yard. All I do is watch. But it alarms me. So I maintain at this point.
Okay.
Continue, please.
Now, throughout this period of time, I want to take it through this whole section, then I'm going to ask you some questions. But you're watching the whole time. You're seeing this real time. This is not something that is a refreshed recollection. It's not something you've seen on the tape. It's something you recall actually seeing that night. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you. You stop right there, sir.
Yes.
Please.
All right, yes, sir. Whose voice is that?
That is Roger Picior talking about getting a hotel room. I can hear him through my bay window asking him about the price of a hotel room.
Why is that a concern to you?
It actually isn't a concern to me. The reason why I'm pointing it out is because he wants to move out of the Gary Hembree house. That's what the conversation is about, what I'm hearing through my glass window.
Okay.
That's why I'm bringing it up to you. I'm listening to their conversation.
Right.
He's inquiring about the cost of a hotel room so he can leave. Keep in mind now, there's 9 people living in a 3-bedroom, one-bath house. So there's a lot of stress across the street that I have witnessed. So that's what this conversation is about. That's why I want you to stop so I can tell you what this conversation is about.
I do appreciate that. But did this conversation cause you in any way to be more or less concerned for your family's safety?
No, sir. This is, for the record, this is a fact that I'm letting you know what this conversation is about.
Okay, well, that's fine. Vantage point watching them through the window, can you actually identify who it is that's holding up whatever they're burning?
No, sir, because at that point right there, when I see the fire lit, at whatever time that is, I'm not even paying attention to the time in my house.
I understand.
And when I see the fire lit is when I go and grab my firearm from my storage place.
Now, what about that caused you to arm yourself?
Because I didn't know if that was a Molotov cocktail fixing to come through and into my house. So that point, and like I told you, at this point I'm not aware of what time it is in my house. All I can see is the danger that's in front of my house. Inside my house, I'm armed.
Right. Okay.
So I'm just pointing out to you.
Now, again, just so the court understands,
Okay.
you don't actually see all of this burning incident because you're in a different part of the house. The beginning of the burning, or at least at this point when things are clearly burning, you decide you need to arm yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
made a beeline in my bedroom.
Take any other action. Did you change your clothing? Did you do anything else in terms of...
No, sir. I was already completely dressed.
Okay. Now, how were you dressed that night?
T-shirt, pants, and shoes.
Okay. What kind of pants?
Camouflage pants.
Okay.
My tiger stripes.
All right. At some point in time, you have a jacket. When do you get your jacket?
Same time I grabbed my pistol.
Okay. So you get your pistol and you get your jacket. Do you get anything else?
No, sir, didn't need anything else. Well, I take that
What
back.
pistol do you get?
My Brett FS92 with the clip sitting right on top of it. I grabbed both of them.
Okay. Now, is that gun loaded?
Yes, sir, it is.
Hold it in the chamber.
Yes, sir, always.
Did it have a clip in it, or did you put a clip in it?
No, sir, it already came with a clip.
Okay.
It was already clipped.
And it had a second clip for reloading.
Sitting right on top of the pistol.
Okay. Do you have a holster?
Yes, sir. I had a circle holster.
Do you put it in a holster?
It was already holstered.
Okay. Do you strap the holster on? Tell the court what you did in terms of arming yourself. Go through the details.
When I saw the blaze begin to ignite,
All right.
I walked straight back to my bedroom, walked right into my clothes closet, opened it up, pulled the clip off the top, slipped it in my left pocket, holstered my weapon to my belt, grabbed my VDU jacket, walked right out to the kitchen table, set it back on, and began my surveillance.
Okay. Well,
Where to
let's
stop?
talk about that. Why didn't you call the police at that point? You're burning something. You're afraid it might be a Molotov cocktail. Why didn't you call the police?
Well, at that point, there was no incursion upon my property.
Okay. Did you have any confidence the police would do anything?
No, sir.
Did you have concern that these people might do something to you and your family?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything about any of your interaction with the police over the previous month that led you to believe that you had made a telephone call and reported everything you had seen up until that point, that they would do a single thing? Anything that they had done that would lead you to believe that they would react to what you were telling them?
Sir, they would not react.
You're convinced of that?
I was convinced of that. In fact, they had shown proof of it.
Now, I'm going to play this, but I want you to tell the court when on this video you go back to a position where you can actually see it. You told us at approximately this time.
Yeah.
You're not watching what's going on. You're going and you're arming yourself. But you also ended with you took up surveillance again. So tell the court when you're back to where you're actually seeing this real time. Ask me to stop whenever we get to the point.
Right about there.
Yeah. Now, these comments that are being screamed, can you actually hear them?
Yes. White out.
Okay. Can you identify who's making those
That was
comments?
Gary Hembree.
And did those comments themselves cause you any concern?
No, sir.
Okay. So again, what's got your attention at this point, just the fact that they're burning something, and you're afraid that that might be a threat to your home.
I'm just focused on the fire.
All right. So, for what period of time after the fire do you continue to watch in your home? Approximately. How long do you stay in your house?
I don't know the exact time, but I know there's a period of time after the fire that I leave my house.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but
Okay.
what I'm trying to get is, if you recall, if you don't
Yes, sir.
recall, that's fine, about how long did you stay in your house watching before you decided that you needed to go outside of your house?
I don't believe it was very long.
Okay.
Maybe a matter of a couple minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Why did you decide to leave your house?
Well, at that point, it convinced me that I needed to be outside my house to be a buffer
What do you mean by a buffer?
and to surveil them even more closely.
What do you mean by a buffer? I don't understand a buffer.
I can't protect my family inside a house from fire. If they make an incursion upon my property with weapons and fire and manpower,
So you wanted to put yourself in between your family and the danger.
I have to, sir.
Okay.
If I'm inside my house, I'm trapped like a rat in a cage. I only made the decision to leave my house to surveil them.
Well, let's talk about that. Right now, they've done some pretty horrendous things, made some pretty horrendous threats
Yes, sir.
and demonstrated to you that they had the ability to carry out the threats.
That's correct.
Said things that made you angry.
Yes, sir.
Said things that made you concerned.
That is correct.
Said things that just disgusted you. Right?
About my wife and children, especially.
So why didn't you just walk over there and kill them all?
Well, because you just don't do things like that, sir.
Who is that? At the corner?
Coming into the screen, that's me, sir.
That's you. Describe to the court the route that you've taken in order to get to the position where you're actually seen on camera.
Excuse me. From my bay window, I put on my jacket, button it up, leave my kitchen door, which is 4 feet from my bay window. I lock the deadbolt, and I lock the doorknob.
Why'd you lock the door?
So that if I was rushed and killed, they couldn't come back into my house through the door. They could have to come through the windows.
All right.
I went out my back garage door, or my carport door, garage, carport, room addition, closed it quietly, went outside my back gate, dropped my keys by my gate post where the gate closes, so that if they just blew off steam, got drunk, and went back inside, I could go back inside my house and prepare my move in the morning like we'd originally planned, my wife and I.
Now, let's talk about get drunk, blow off steam. Did you have some reason to believe they'd been drinking that night?
Yeah, I can see them with cans, beer cans. You can see it gleam off the street light in my road. There's a street light. They have their lights. I can see the beer cans.
About how long a period had you been observing them drinking?
Well, we got home shortly after 9 o'clock.
Okay.
I can see beer cans in their hands.
It's midnight now.
It's midnight.
Any period of time that you believe that they weren't drinking?
No, sir.
The fact that they've been drinking all that period of time, did that do anything in terms of your concerns?
Other than brief periods of time of assisting my wife with the children, getting them to bed, I kept them under a fairly constant surveillance.
I understand, but the fact that they had been drinking, did
Yes,
that play any part in your thought process?
Yes, because drunk people do really stupid things.
Had these particular people demonstrated to you through their actions in the past that they were more inclined to do stupid things when they were drunk?
Yes, sir.
So you're, I'm sorry, and I may have interrupted you. You were describing to me that you had taken this position, closed and locked your kitchen door, and you did what to get to the position where you can be seen in the camera?
When I walked out my back garage door, I went immediately to my yard gate, which is a swinging gate. I dropped my keys at the gate post, closed my gate. My keys were dropped there for a specific reason, to allow me to get back in my house once they blew off steam. Went back in, and we're going to sleep off a hangover. I could come back into my house for a stand-down. All I was going out there was for a buffer and to surveil them and to listen. That's why my keys were there.
All right.
I knew were there. Only I knew were there.
Okay.
That they were there. I could come back in, go back inside, and begin the moving process for the next day. That's why my trailer's there.
Why are you crawling on the ground?
So they can't see me, sir. If they see me, they're going to come over and then I'm in trouble.
Have they demonstrated to you through their actions, not only this evening, but if they saw you, that would incite them to action as opposed to deter action?
Well, yes, sir. I had just heard a conversation earlier that they wanted to draw me out to the street. They wanted to fight me. And they wanted me to go to jail. And they made an incursion on my property with a firearm. So yes, I have to be invisible to them. There's no other way for me to keep my eyes and ears on what they're saying and doing unless I'm invisible to them.
Okay. So where do you take up your surveillance?
As you... Am I still there in the corner of the screen?
I can move it further a little bit. You are, but it's blurry.
Okay. Anyway, from right there, a car spooks me, so I duck back in and go back to the front of my truck. And then I make it from the front of my truck, out of the view of the camera, between my trailer and my house, where I've got a perfect line of sight and line of hearing directly to their front yard, where all the action is. I can hear them and I can see them perfectly. There's not a single branch moving on my tree. There's no wind. There's nothing to interfere with my hearing or my vision. So I've got a perfect surveillance of everything they're doing. That's all I'm there for. Is a buffer to see them coming before they can see me. That's all.
While you are there, do you see or hear them do anything that causes you concern?
Yes, sir. As I advance further, and as time goes on, now I can hear them conspiring about my own death.
In what way?
They're talking about shooting me, and it's going to be legal in Constitution. That's Roger and Gary talking as they're sitting outside in Gary's front yard, up close to the house. That I can see with my own eyes. Gary's even wearing his shirt, a yellowish-orange shirt, and Roger's wearing a horizontal striped blue and light blue shirt, dark blue, medium blue. I can see that clear as day. And I can hear him talking about he got his ass whooped at the courthouse. Now it's a retaliation. When we get him out there to fight, boom, you get to shoot him in self-defense. I'm not a dummy. I can hear what they're saying. They lure me out. I beat up Gary. Well, Gary's got a 22 on him. Pow! It's conspiracy to commit murder that I'm listening and hearing. My own death. And you're going to hear it coming up. But I can hear it in my yard.
Now, at that point, do you jump up and shoot him?
No. Am I alarmed? Yes. That's why I'm out there, is to be a buffer between myself and my family. Because now this is real. This has gone beyond playful joking, as they call it. This is not a joke anymore, Mr. Eisenmenger. This is real life.
At that point in time, did you have a concern that they were armed?
Yes, I did.
Based on what?
Test firing of a weapon and the conversation with the two girls that I heard, and them walking up into my driveway with a firearm. Because the two girls confirmed that they had a firearm when they said, he's got a gun. Oh my God, he's got a gun. They didn't know I can hear them say that. So why would they put on a show for me? My house is blacked out. There's not a single light on in my house.
You can move this forward to 25 even.
So you're moving it ahead another 20 minutes or something?
Possibly. Now, is it during this 20-minute, well, I'm trying to move it up to the point that you just told us about where you hear this conversation about shooting, etc. But in the intervening time, as we've heard in court, have you been in a position where you can hear the other comments and threats that they're making during this interim 20-minute period?
Yes, sir. I can hear every person and everything that they're saying with clarity.
Can you relate to the court some of the things that you heard them say during this intervening 20-minute period that I've just skipped forward on before we get to the point where they're talking about being able to legally shoot you?
By the other parties?
Yes.
No, sir. My main focus was on the males. Roger, Gary, and Bruce.
Well, I mean, just let me do it like this then, because
If you're asking me if I tuned in to all 6 of them and paid attention to all 6, no, I did not.
I'm asking you that in this period of time, when you're sitting there surveilling the situation, did you hear, other than this talk about killing you, other threats, comments, etc., directed toward you and your family?
Specifically? Yes.
What type of things do you recall them saying?
After they made the conspiracy.
No, before they make the conspiracy.
Oh, before they make
in that 20-minute period. And if you don't recall, I'm excited to see if it refreshes your recollection.
No, sir, I do not recall. I remember during this time frame inching along the ground to place myself in a better position.
Okay.
Because there's a period of time where not much is being said other than, I would say, general conversation. If that makes sense to you, sir.
I want you to listen to the sequence and see if it refreshes your recollection about whether or not you heard this or whether or not you didn't hear it that night.
I can hear this, what's being said.
Just listen to this. It refreshes your recollection. I'm going to ask you some questions if it does. So listen. You have a refreshed recollection of whether or not there were comments that you actually heard in this time period between when you first took up surveillance and you heard these comments about legally shooting.
Yes, sir.
And what things do you recall them saying?
Are you talking about threatening comments or just
Threatening comments.
There were obviously what we just heard.
Okay.
What I heard came out of their mouths.
Okay. You heard of that night?
Yes, sir. I'm on the ground and I'm looking and watching this.
Okay.
I can hear it plain as day. Will you stop that, Greg?
Is that the conversation you're referring to?
That's the specific conversation I was tuned into about them conspiring to shoot me after a fist fight with Gary. That's the specific reference that had me highly concerned.
Now, at that point in time, as we can tell from the surveillance, you still haven't acted other than surveillance. Did there come a point in time that you heard or observed something that caused you to snap, to take action?
Later on, you're going to hear what I heard was them gathering forces.
Describe to the court what you heard and perceived, what you thought was occurring.
Gather weapons. Come on, let's get up. Let's go do this. Let's end this. It's a gathering of the forces. It caused me to snap into action and do what I did.
Now, you various times after you talked with the police, you actually talked about that you snapped. You went into what you described as soldier mode or warrior mode. What did you mean by that?
I was trained in the art of warfare. Just like every soldier who enters basic training, you're trained in the basic infantry tactics. And I was trained in advanced infantry tactics at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, 25th Infantry Division. Part of my promotion steps to E5.
Now, when you actually heard the comments, we're going to end this, you described gathering up the forces, all that.
Yes, sir.
What was your belief about what was going to happen?
That they were now coming to the house to dispatch with myself, my wife, and my children. And at that point, yes, that was the point I had to take action because I could not let my children die.
Did you have any doubt that violence was imminent?
Yes, sir. Beyond a shadow of a doubt at that point. Because when I heard, get up, let's get this, let's gather the forces, let's get your weapons. And at that point, it was get a bat. One of them already had a firearm that had already been established. They had already established the fact that they were making fire and the fact that there were 6 adults, 5 dogs at their disposal. That's a lot of weight to bear upon one male, 1 female, and 2 children.
Is that what caused you to snap?
Step into action? Yes, sir.
Snap into warrior mode? Snap into soldier mode? Whatever you want to refer to it as?
If you want to, no, my military training has never left me. I was trained as a soldier. There may be people in this courtroom who are trained as soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. They're familiar with warfare.
Is that where you were at that point in time? Were you in war?
You doggone right I was. War had been declared upon my house and family and myself. Now I'm the only living link between my wife and children in imminent death. I'm the only living link that separates them from a horrible death. Do you not understand that, sir?
When you hear that, when you hear those words to convince you that that is about to happen, what is it that you do?
I turned that corner and I engaged my first target.
Who was your first target?
Roger Picior, who was wrestling with a male child over a baseball bat, over the possession of a baseball bat. And you're going to hear that baseball bat fall to the ground as I shoot him. You're going to hear that bat fall from the ground as I watch it fall out of his hands. First, one disarmed, hits the ground. Is that clear to you, sir?
Yes, sir, it is. Now, what happens next?
I leave Roger. I head straight to Bruce's garage because I do not see Gary Hembree. And as soon as I make eye contact with Bruce's body, he lunges for his gang box where he's got multiple weapons and tools at his disposal. And I engage his torso with multiple rounds, and I follow him to that gang box until he cannot move, sir. And my weapon is out of ammunition. I reload at that point, knowing that he cannot move to that gang box, and pick up a weapon, engage me. I then walk around Roger Picior's body, who is still moving at that point, which gives me cause of concern. And then the porch light at Gary Hembree's house comes on. Gary Hembree walks out of the garage with Kim right behind him. He says, what the hell is here what the hell is going on here? And his hand lowers just like this, right at me. And I engage him with one shot to the chest, center mass. He falls to the ground, and I rapidly move to his body and engage his body with multiple shots to make sure he cannot have what is in his hand.
Did you learn at that point what was in his hand?
After the fact, a coffee mug, sir.
What did you think it was at the time you shot him?
A pistol. When you lower your hand in this fashion toward another human being, that's a pistol. I immediately engaged him. I didn't even hesitate.
What did you do next?
I walked right back around to Roger Picior's body where the baseball bat was lying on the concrete, and I re-engaged his body to make sure that he could not get back up and take that baseball bat to me.
What do you mean re-engage?
Get up and fight.
What did you do to him to make sure he could not carry on the fight with you?
I put more bullets into his body because he was still alive, sir.
And based on your training and the mode that you were in, on the battlefield that you played, does a single soldier leave a viable enemy behind him?
You cannot, sir, because that enemy will get up and shoot you in the back, as has been displayed in many of our wars in previous history. A lot of our Vietnam veterans were shot in the back by the Viet Cong. In World War II, Germans would play dead, get up and shoot our Americans in the back. Korea, Desert Storm. Check that, not Desert Storm. In our current state in Iraq, which we have just seen 10 horrible years of warfare, yes, Iraqis would play dead, turn around and shoot our GIs in the back. All the way back to World War I, sir.
What else did you do after you made sure that Mr. Picior was not able to attack you?
I heard Jessica Noble screaming behind me. At that point, my firearm was cocked to the rear and empty. When I heard her screaming, I was alarmed at that point that someone was coming up behind me, so I raised my pistol to where the screaming was coming from. And I immediately turned my head and I followed her around with my pistol. I released the slide. The slide went forward and I pulled the trigger to make sure that she knew to stay away from me. Once I realized she had no weapons, that she was just screaming, that I made eye contact with her, I holstered my pistol and I left the scene. And I walked back to my house. And someone asked me, did you get them all? And that's when I yelled, yes, I got them all. And I walked back up into my yard after taking off my jacket. I walked back up to retrieve my keys from their hiding place, knowing that the 3 males were no longer a threat. I found them. When I heard sirens, I was at peace, because now the police were here, and they could help me sort this out. And I could tell them what happened, and I could tell them that everything was finally over. And I praise God and I praise Jesus Christ that it was Officer Anderson. He's a very, very kind officer. And I surrendered my weapons to him.
Did you, after you surrendered your weapons to him, did you talk with him about what happened?
As much as I could remember, and the questions that he asked.
Mr. Woodward, we ended yesterday with playing the statement that you gave the police officer when he first arrived. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, I just want to expound on this a little bit. Basically, during that interview, he asked you, and you acknowledged, that the 3 individuals that you shot were unarmed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When did you actually determine that they were unarmed?
After they had fallen and were shot
How did you determine that they were unarmed?
by sight.
Okay. Now, up until the point that you actually rounded the corner and began shooting, did you know at that point that they were unarmed?
No, sir.
Now, I believe that you had mentioned yesterday that, excuse me, losing my voice, that the first individual that you shot, Roger, was actually, between he and his son, had what you thought was a baseball bat. Is that correct?
I didn't testify that it was his son. I said a boy.
A boy, okay.
But they were wrestling over the possession of a baseball bat.
And you had mentioned, first, while you were in court on multiple occasions, did you hear what you believed to be the sound of that bat hitting the ground?
I saw the bat hit the ground, sir.
I understand. That wasn't the question I asked you. I'm going to ask you that question. But just on the tape yourself, is it audible on the tape, the sound of that bat hitting the ground?
Yes, sir.
Right after
Very
you shot
distinctly
it?
and clearly.
Okay. Now, you also, at various times yesterday, testified that you actually heard them talking at different times in the evening about that.
That is correct, sir.
And Mr. Blake himself confirmed that he heard that, and we've heard it multiple times now, played in court, that there was discussion about that.
That is correct, sir.
Mr. Woodward, these are showing you now, and it's Exhibit 12, 13, 14. Photographs that we took from Exhibit 4, all the photographs that the police took that show various signs of the scene after they arrived. I want you to look through any of those and see if you can find the bat that you saw or the bat that Mr. Blake testified that he had been, that they had been using and talking about anywhere on the scene.
Just these two pictures?
No, all those pictures.
Can I undo the...
If you need
I'll
to,
get-
sure, yeah. Try and keep them together because it's a composite exhibit, but you can unclip them.
So you want me to turn them over in order?
No, sir. You can keep them however you want. I just
There's
want you to
12.
examine any of them. I just
There's
want
13.
you to keep those because they were all put together. You can unclip them to look at them, but please, after you finish looking at them,
Yes, sir.
put them back.
That's okay. Second. That's close enough.
First question is, you see any bats?
Negative, sir.
Now, you actually saw a bat that night, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
You heard Bruce Blake agree that they had bats that night.
That's correct, sir.
I think his explanation was something like they were using it to beat on the boys that were wrestling, on the loser. You heard that?
As far as his
What
testimony?
was his testimony?
Yes, sir.
And he also acknowledged, and we heard in court on multiple occasions, they're talking about the bats. Where would the bat have been? Strike that. What area on those photographs would have depicted the area where the bat hit the ground?
It would have been, if you will approach, sir, I'll give you a rough idea. You see the Blake traveling.
Okay. What I want to do, this is important for the court to see it, not so much for me to see it.
I need to see it too.
Come on. Oh, please. This is part of composite exhibit,
Okay.
and this is the area that shows the...
Can I stand, please?
Yes.
Your Honor? Where Mr. Kakur's body was and where the two people were wrestling, when Roger Kakur slumped over, the bat fell out of his hand and hit the driveway here, where the clank was. I stepped over that bat to enter the Blake driveway, stepped around the rear of the Blake car. Now, to my memory, the Blake car had been moved.
You can sit down. Okay. Yeah.
It appears as though the scene's been changed. Cars have been changed.
You left right after you ascertained that they were unarmed and no longer a threat. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Went back to your home.
Yes, sir.
You don't know what was done to the scene in the interim between when you left and the police arrived and secured the scene. Is that correct?
That's what I do not.
I'm going to talk with you about some of the language that you used in talking with them. You were questioned by the police officer about what you meant by low crawling. And you explained to them that that's how soldiers sneak up on their prey. What did you mean by that?
Well, sir, on the field of battle, when you are approaching an enemy camp or an enemy position, or if you are seeking to put yourself in a position for a raid or an ambush, to use the low crawl to keep yourself in a position where if the enemy is using night vision devices or in daytime binoculars, if they scan a horizon, if all they see is flat and level ground, or if they don't detect the movement of bushes, then that is to your advantage. If you're under fire, you use the low crawl to keep yourself at ground level or possibly below ground level. This way, if bullets are coming at you, they go over top of you. You don't want anything to be seen or shot, especially your body.
Okay.
In the military, they teach you to be as low as possible. And in my position that night, I used a low crawl also, favoring my left side. I was able to keep my left ear tuned in that direction. That is why I favored my left side over my right side.
Why did you use the terminology prey?
To be honest with you, I really don't know. It was just off the cuff at that point.
Okay. Now, yesterday when you were testifying, we showed you the video, and you had indicated that when you first saw them attempting to light something, that's when you moved from observing them and armed yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you said at that point in time that your initial concern, you didn't know what they were lighting, and you were concerned that it might be a Molotov cocktail, correct?
That's correct.
But after you armed yourself and you moved in a position you could see, you could tell that it wasn't a Molotov cocktail, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that the reason that you continued just to surveil rather than take action at that point?
That's correct, sir.
If they had, at that point in time, approached your house, looked like they were throwing something at your house, like a Molotov cocktail, carrying out their threats to burn your house in some way, would you have acted rather than just watched?
If they had encroached on my property at that point, I was armed and I could have exited my front door and then dispatched with them on my property.
Okay.
That's correct.
And so, even though you had concerns about what it was, as soon as you were able to allay somewhat the concerns that at least a firebombing was not imminent, you did not act. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I had no reason to.
Okay. And likewise, after you had taken up your position outside the house, where you put yourself between them and your family, as you put it yesterday, a buffer, and they were making insulting and inflammatory statements towards you, not even knowing that you were that close, you still didn't act, correct?
I had no reason to, sir.
Why didn't you have a reason to?
Well, because the threat was not imminent at that point.
Okay. Had they taken action, words or actions, to lead you to believe that they were getting ready to act, would you have acted?
Of course, at that point, then I was ready to act. But they had given me no reason to act at that point.
Okay. So you weren't just shooting them because they were harassing your family.
No, sir.
You weren't just shooting them because they were saying nasty things about you and your family.
No, sir, that's not a reason to shoot him.
Okay. Why is it that you acted?
Because I heard them saying, let's get together and do this. Grab your weapons, let's go. Let's end this. At that point, it was time to act. And I had no other choice but to act at that moment.
When you heard the words, let's end it, or words to that effect, what did you think they were about to do?
Cross the line and do something. Bring my life to it.
Was there any way that you were going to let them get to a point where they could physically harm your wife and children?
No, sir, I was not. I was not going to let them get to my family.
Did you have concerns that that's where they were going and what they were going to do?
Absolutely, sir. In that point, they would have to step over my dead body to do it. They were not going to.
I would tender the witness.
Cross.
Mr. Woodward, this was a military operation as far as you were concerned, correct? Mr. Woodward? Mr. Woodward?
One moment, please. Let me get them. Sir, this was not a military operation. This was just me observing and placing myself between them and my family with military training to back me up. This was not a full-scale military operation as you see it, sir.
Well, you told the officer that you were back on the battlefield.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was trained.
Trained. Okay. Well, let's get. How much time did you spend on a battlefield?
Actually on the battlefield.
Yes, sir.
If you recall, and I'm sure your memory is very clear, Persian Gulf War lasted from February 16th to February, maybe mid-February, late February. So I believe it was referred to as the 100-hour war, or no, the ground war was 100 hours. So it wasn't very long.
No, I'm asking you personally, sir. How much time did you personally spend in infantry combat on the battlefield?
Infantry combat?
Yes, sir.
Zero. All I did was full guard duty, sir.
Oh, okay. So you never actually engaged in actual battlefield combat yourself?
I never testified that I did, sir.
No, you said you were back on the battlefield. That's what you told the police officer. What battlefield were you back on? Standing guard?
Well, if you count running from Scud missiles, that's a battlefield.
Oh, okay. Now, you testified that you had advanced infantry training.
That's correct, sir.
But you never actually engaged any infantry combat, did you?
No, sir.
Okay.
I was trained for it, but I praise God that I never had to engage and kill anybody.
Okay, let's talk about your training. During your infantry training, were you taught that it's common practice and acceptable to execute helpless wounded enemy lying on the ground? They teach you that in your training?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware, sir, that that's a war crime?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
So it's your testimony that you were trained during your formal Army military training to execute the wounded enemy laying helpless on the ground. The United States Army trained you and taught you to do that.
The Army did not train me to do that.
Oh, okay.
That was the steps I took.
That was what?
That was the steps I took to make sure they could not get back up to their weapon.
Oh. Well, you gave some testimony here that that's common. They've done this in all wars. They did it in World War II, and they did it in Korea, and they did all these things that they commonly shot the people when they were on the ground to prevent them from getting up. Were you trained to do that by the military?
Actually, sir,
Actually.
in simulated combat training, we expended a lot of rounds into enemy bodies.
That's not what I asked you. Did the military train you to stand over the wounded, helpless enemy laying on the ground and shoot them, execute them?
No, sir, they didn't. And yes, you are correct. That is a war crime by the Geneva Convention.
Now, you indicated that you did the low crawling because that's the tactics you use so that they can't see you with night vision. Did those people over at the Hembree house have night vision?
No, sir, they had a floodlight shining on my house.
Okay, so the whole thing about night vision really was just your imagination?
No, sir.
Okay. When you heard what you believe was 4 gunshots, particularly a .22 caliber gunshot, why didn't you call the Titusville Police Department and say, we got shots being fired, people next door to me are firing a gun? Why didn't you do that?
Well, sir, the police didn't act on previous calls.
Did they always come out when you called them?
Not always.
Oh, okay. Tell me how many times you called the Titusville Police Department that they didn't respond.
Let's see. I called myself personally once for an escort back to the house. And they came 10 minutes late.
But they came.
They came.
Okay, so every time you called the police, they came.
To my recollection, they eventually came.
Eventually, but they came.
But they came.
Okay.
Yes, sir. No action was taken.
Okay. But they showed up.
Yes, sir.
If you'd have called them that night and said gunfire's happening over there, they'd have, as far as you knew, they'd have showed up, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Based on your experience, they'd have showed up.
Let me, if there's an objection,
Okay.
ask a different question.
All right. So they'd always come in the past, correct?
Ask and answer.
Overrule.
They always came in the past, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you looked out your window and saw what, in your mind, was a Molotov cocktail being lit. By the way, how far from your house was that you saw what you thought was a Molotov cocktail?
That would be about 60 feet.
60 feet.
Linear.
Okay. And I guess I probably need to ask you, tell me what you believe a Molotov cocktail is.
A glass bottle with a wick filled with gasoline or some other flammable liquid.
Okay. And how is it used?
Well, you throw it into a vehicle, you throw it at somebody, or you throw it into a dwelling.
Okay.
It breaks, shatters, and creates fire.
And basically it's got a rag or something, you light the end of it and then throw it, correct?
Precisely.
What happens if you light that and don't throw it?
Well, it's just going to burn
It's going to blow you up, blow yourself up, right?
eventually.
Okay. How long did you watch that thing burning before you decided to quit watching and go get your gun?
Well, we just watched the video. I watched it long enough to realize that it was not a Molotov cocktail.
Okay. So by the time you went and got your gun, you already realized it was not a Molotov cocktail.
I just testified to that, sir.
Okay. You indicated, you said you went to the state attorney's office about all this and they refused to help you. Who specifically did you talk to at the state attorney's office?
The very nice lady sitting there at the help desk.
At the front desk, the reception desk.
Yes, sir.
In fact, didn't she tell you that the state attorney's office doesn't investigate matters, that you needed to go to the Titusville Police Department?
Objection.
Yes, sir.
Be here. Mr. Woodward.
Mr. Woodward, remember, like with everybody else, it's probably to your advantage if your lawyer's objecting to stop talking.
They were both talking at the same time I could.
Well, another example of the same thing. Mr. Beatty, if you do me the courtesy of letting me rule on an objection before you continue talking to me.
Once he objected, I shut up.
Everybody is talking at once. And Mr. Eisenberger, if you would, promptly and loudly announce the legal basis for your objection, I'd be glad to rule on it.
Hearsay.
Sustain. Go ahead.
But Judge, I'm not offering for the truth of the matter asserted.
Sure you are. Well, sustain.
Okay.
You're offering it to prove that the state attorney's office told him you don't do that kind of stuff. There's no other reason for that question. Ask him something else.
So the only person the state attorney's office you spoke with was the receptionist at the front desk.
She redirected the question to a state attorney. When the answer came back to her, she relayed what a state attorney had told her.
So you never actually spoke with a state attorney?
She wouldn't allow me to, sir.
Okay.
She got the information from a state attorney.
Okay.
They would not allow me access to a state attorney.
Okay. So, did you ever gather up all these videos that you had?
I didn't, sir.
No,
I'm not-
let me finish my questions. Get with all your neighbors in that neighborhood who had been putting up with this for so long. Did you ever get all that together and make an appointment with Mr. Wolfinger, the state attorney, to bring this to his attention?
No, sir, we did not.
Okay, so you really didn't make much of an effort to get the state attorney involved in this, did you?
Objection, argument.
Anything further, Jim?
All right, read rep.
Thank you. When you, as part of your military training, were you trained not to leave a enemy combatant who could represent a threat to you or your fellow soldiers behind?
That's correct, sir.
Now, Mr. Beatty threw in the shoot a wounded, helpless person as being a war crime. Did you shoot a wounded, helpless person? Did you know that the person was not a threat to you any longer when you shot them?
No, they were not helpless. They were wounded. But in my opinion, and as I saw it, they were still a threat to me.
And is that the only reason that you dispatched them?
That's correct, sir. I wanted to make sure that they could not continue on with their threat.
Now, in a military sense, you were a one-man operation, correct?
At that point, yes, sir, it was one against all of them.
Okay. Now, again, part of your training, it is a rare situation where a soldier is put in a situation where it is a single soldier engaging multiple enemy combatants, correct?
Objection is to the relevance.
Overruled.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So most of your training involved a situation where you were working in concert with other soldiers, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. But your training did touch on what would happen if you did find yourself in a situation where it was, for whatever reason, you against multiple enemy, correct?
In fact, vividly, I remember at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, when I was taught to fight without weapons, to very cruelly and without prejudice crush a man's throat and leave him there. Even if he was unarmed, to finish him off with a very violent crush to the throat and the skull, to take the butt of my weapon and crush his skull in. If you want to go that far with it, sir, yes, sir. We were taught to take an unarmed soldier and crush his skull with the butt of my weapon and bayonet him until he could no longer move. So yes, Mr. Beatty, we were taught...
Mr. Woodward, you're answering my question. You are not addressing Mr. Beatty.
Yes, sir. We were taught to take it to that extreme, to bayonet and crush a soldier to death.
Okay. Now, Mr. Woodward, you said that the Titusville Police Department always eventually showed up, correct? Yes. And they didn't take any action to protect you and your family. You previously have testified to that, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And we saw... About how long did these people cease in their activities against your family after the police left, based on your experience?
Just a matter of minutes and they were right back to it.
So even if you had called the police and reported what you knew to be gunshots, did you have any expectation that they would do anything?
Objection, speculation.
It's his state of mind.
Please repeat that now that everything's taken care of.
Thank you. Even if you had called the police when you heard the gunshots, and they eventually showed up, did you have any expectation they would take any action?
The police?
Yes.
I believe they wouldn't take any action.
Okay. But even after they left, did you have any expectation that calling the police would cause these people to cease in their activities against you?
No, in fact, on previous occasions, it empowered them after the police left, and it would increase their spirit of, all right, we got away with it again. Now we can keep on going. Yeah, keep on going.
And did you have any expectation that if you called the police, they would remain on 24-hour, 7 days a week guarding of your home to protect you against these activities, against the people and your neighbors, against you?
Please back up and say that one more time. You were a little too fast.
Okay, my fault. My adrenaline's flowing. Based on your experience, would they have left a police officer on guard to guard your family, to put an officer between your family and these people as a buffer, like you placed yourself as a buffer between your family? Did you think?
It would not.
Now, the nice lady at the state attorney's office, just for the record, I know that the court already knows this, but I would like to establish it for the record. She's behind a glass window and a locked door, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Nobody gets past her. She's the gatekeeper. Nobody gets to talk to anybody but her unless someone in the state attorney's office decides, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And so when you went there to make an appointment to talk with the state attorney, she's the one you talked to, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, on three
I don't
different
want you to
occasions.
repeat what you said,
Thank you, sir.
okay? Because I'm not asking for hearsay. But your purpose was trying to get an appointment with a state attorney to get help, right?
That's correct, sir.
You would have been satisfied with even an assistant like Mr. Beatty. You didn't actually need to go all the way to the top and talk with Mr. Wolfinger, did you?
I didn't care. I just want to talk to somebody.
Okay. But they wouldn't even allow you to talk with an assistant, much less the state attorney, would they?
No, sir.
And they weren't interested in how much stuff you had to show them. Correct?
Judge, this is objective. This is total speculation. We have no idea what he told them. Speculation.
Parts the objection.
Yes.
Sustained.
Now, let's talk about gathering up your videos and gathering up your witnesses. That's exactly what you did for the injunction hearing, correct?
That is correct.
And you didn't get to play your videos for Judge Moxley, did you?
No, sir, we did not.
And you didn't get, Judge Moxley wasn't interested in talking to your witnesses, was he?
No, sir, he was not.